The eternal heaven god emperor is speechless before Kang Shishin's mockery. Yun Qi's shocking display at the conferred god stage has the entire eastern divine region watching. Leave a like and subscribe to see how far this defiance goes. Reverse fury far off in the east, the figures of two girls could be seen flying over at an extremely fast speed. The two of them were delicate and exquisite. One of the duo was in red skirt and had red hair, and the other was dressed in a bright-colored skirt that was fluttering in the wind. Their appearance in this place was like the sudden descent of absolutely beautiful fairies from fairy tales in the ordinary world, making everything around seem illusory. We're finally here. I think that we just passed through the eternal heaven realm's restriction, so why didn't anyone come to stop us? The face of Princess Xianxia was glowing rosy with excitement, and her heart had been beating hard all this while, because she could finally do something for her elder sister. Furthermore, it was going to be a very big and pleasant surprise for her. "You're the distinguished heavenly wolf star god who would dare block your way?" Jasmine said with displeasure. Hee. Princess Xianxia stuck out the pink tip of her tongue as her starry eyes looked quietly at the expression of her elder sister. The closer they got to the conferred god stage, the more excited she felt in her heart. There was no way Jasmine wouldn't notice Xianxia's strange behavior. She looked sideways. "Xianxia, we have already reached here. How about letting me know of your true objective now? Don't tell me that you only made me accompany you to watch the fight of a group of children. You're also a child, right? I don't want to hear Big Sis calling others in that manner." Xianxia pursed her lips as she said in protest. Although she had been acting mysterious this whole time, Jasmine felt that Xianxia was in a very good mood, to say the least. Moreover, she was very intensely looking forward to something, which meant that it was definitely not something bad. Therefore, she was not at all worried either. "We'll soon reach the god-conferred stage, the god-conferred stage." Xianxia was, after all, too young, so she naturally didn't have much control over her emotions. Thinking of the event that was likely going to happen next, she started to become uncontrollably excited. "I feel the auras of Royal Father and Uncle Eternal Heaven. There are so many people here. Ah!" As if she had suddenly bumped into an invisible dimensional wall and then was struck by the profound lightning from the ninth heaven, Jasmine stopped in her tracks all of a sudden. Her entire body had gone stiff, and she stayed still for a long while. "Big Sis!" Xianxia also promptly stopped moving ahead any further, but when she turned around to look at Jasmine, she was at once dumbfounded with surprise. In her line of sight, the very elder sister, who was feared by all in the star god realm, was ice cold to everyone except for her, as well as dared to say the word, "get lost," in the face of her royal father. The star god emperor had her entire body shaking in an incomparably intense manner. Her blood-red eyes had completely lost their red light, and her pupils rapidly enlarged and contracted over and over again. Moreover, her slightly parted lips were trembling continuously. The aura of her whole body was in such disorder that Xianxia found it unbelievable. Big Sis!" Xianxia thought that her elder sister would certainly be very excited to see Yun Qi all of a sudden. She was really looking forward to that scene, hoping to give her elder sister a pleasant surprise. But she was really scared upon seeing this reaction of Jasmine. Jasmine didn't respond in the least to Xianxia's voice, as she appeared to have become soulless. The world before her eyes would sometimes turn blurry. At other times it seemed to her as if the heaven and earth were rotating. "Yun Qi. HMPH, Yun Qi." The brows of Honorable Kui lowered a bit as his voice grew ice-cold. "Do you know why this honored one has called you out?" "I know." Facing directly Honorable Kui, Yun Qi replied in a flat tone. "It's because you all feel that I shouldn't have appeared at this place. Since you're aware of it, honestly confess what you did." Honorable Kui's voice was as mighty and cold as before. "The consequences you'll be facing will be a bit less severe if you confess it yourself. It doesn't matter if you don't do so, either. The projections within the Eternal Heaven Pearl are completely imprinted inside it. When the time comes, we would be able to tell what you did just at a glance. No need for that. I certainly employed dishonorable means to pass the first and second rounds of preliminaries." Yun Qi's tone was calm, as if he was talking about someone else. Moreover, he directly told it as it was. "I coerced a person with very strong, profound strength and very high ranking, and killed them once in each round before it ended. Consequently, I got 30% of their soul orbs in both the rounds, simple as that." He had accomplished his objective by being able to come here. As for the consequences, he was already prepared for them. He did not care at all about his qualification being cancelled, and him driven out. He was not in the slightest concerned about him being despised, ridiculed, or becoming a laughingstock. He would even gladly accept to be thrown away after having all his limbs broken. After all, this place was the eternal heaven realm, the most righteous, benevolent, and fair star realm. Although he committed the mistake of cheating, he would at least not be killed as his punishment. The thing he was most afraid of, and the result he would find most unacceptable, was for Jasmine to have not come to this place. Far in the distance, high in the sky, given Xianxia's current realm, she could still clearly hear all the voices, despite being extremely far away. So he used such a method, Princess Xianxia said in a low voice. Xianxia's muttering finally got a reaction from Jasmine. She slowly turned her eyes to her. Xianxia, is this the reason for you bringing me here? Amen. Xianxia turned to her and nodded her head energetically. Hehe, big sis, you definitely didn't expect this, right? Actually, when Xianxia's voice gradually lowered, and the happy smile on her face disappeared quickly, because the expression her elder sister was looking at her with was so cold and fearsome. It was the first time in her life seeing such an expression from her elder sister. Big sis, she called out timidly, not knowing what to do. Jasmine's eyes shifted away from Xianxia. She silently looked at the conferred god stage without budging an inch or uttering a word. Xianxia was like a scared kitten at this moment. She remained obediently and timidly standing beside Jasmine, not daring to talk to her, as her heart filled with uneasiness and grievance. I did something wrong again. Have I got myself into trouble? But Big Sis clearly misses him so much. Woo, just where exactly did I make a mistake? Xianxia's direct confession immediately caused an uproar. Among the heaven-chosen children, Wu Geik's body was shaking, and his face instantly became a bit pale. Such a calm and straightforward confession was somewhat beyond the expectations of others. But for the coerced party to be able to let a person make it into the ranks of the heaven-chosen children, with 30% of their soul orbs, they must be an outstanding person even among the heaven-chosen children, with the capability to place closer to the top rankers. There was no doubt that they should have an extremely high level of cultivation and origin. How could such a person be coerced by someone from the lower realm, who was merely at the divine tribulation realm? A profound practitioner of such an origin and strength would certainly have an extremely strong sense of dignity for the profound way. How was it possible for them to accept such a thing? In any case, now that Xianxia had admitted to cheating, it was quite a bit easier to handle the matter. Honorable Kui suddenly lowered his brows as he said in a stern voice, "You truly have got some nerve to actually dare do such a despicable deed at the Profound God Convention. You not even once cared for the significance of Profound God Convention or my eternal heaven realm. You don't possess the least bit of the dignity or sense of shame of a profound practitioner." Kui's severe rebuke caused the whole place to become quiet. Mu Huanji was so frightened that he looked deathly pale. Mu Bingyun, however, suddenly got up at this time. "Esteemed God Emperors, Honorable Kui, this junior is Mu Bingyun from the Divine Ice Phoenix sect of the Snow Song realm. Xianxia is a disciple of my Divine Ice Phoenix sect, and it's due to improper guidance of our sect that he has committed such a great mistake. I hope that he is given a light punishment, considering his ignorance due to his young age. When I return to the sect with him, he will certainly be strictly disciplined and punished. The eternal heaven god realm will also definitely be given a sufficient explanation." Swish. All gazes instantly shifted to the seating area of the Snow Song realm, causing everyone present over there to feel as if 10,000 swords were pointed at them, as their souls shivered. Snow Song realm. HMPH? Honorable Kui didn't even turn around his head to look at the people from the Snow Song realm. He grunted in a heavy voice. "The Snow Song realm is overseen by Realm King Xuanian, and hence is a star realm that has prestige in the eastern divine region. For such a despicable person to be from there makes even this honored one feel ashamed on your behalf," Mu Bingyun. Kui said with sunken brows, "Explanation. My eternal heaven realm doesn't need any explanation. This convention is a grand event of our eastern divine region. These 1,000 heaven-chosen children are of such great significance that has never been felt before. However, a person of such inferior ability and character became a part of them through despicable means. How are you going to explain this to the eastern divine region, and to all the youngsters who gave their all to advance further at the Profound God Convention? Not only him, but you people of the Snow Song realm will also be held responsible for this matter." Xianxia frowned. The great significance of the 1,000 heaven-chosen children. What significance? Bingyun? Mu Huanji wanted to stop Mu Bingyun, but he heard her continue. Xianxia isn't an ordinary disciple of my divine Ice Phoenix sect, and instead the sole direct disciple of my current sect master. He is from the lower realm, and it has been only a short time since he arrived at the God realm. Moreover, he is stubborn, stupid, and unruly by nature. That is the only reason for him to commit such a great mistake. I really hope that Honorable Kui shows some leniency. My divine Ice Phoenix sect will be endlessly grateful to you. What? Direct disciple? Such a lowly person is actually the direct disciple of Realm King Xuanian of the Snow Song Realm. That's impossible, right? Realm King Xuanian is one of the divine masters of the Eastern Divine Region. Such trash is actually her direct disciple. With his deed, not only has he implicated the Snow Song Realm, but also completely disgraced Realm King Xuanian, Sai. He made a fool of himself. Junzile shifted her gaze sideways, feeling it beneath her to spare him another glance. It was as if it would dirty her eyes if she were to look at Xianxia. Her heart was brimming with hatred. Thinking that she had apologized to such trash on her knee not that long ago, she felt twice as disgraced as before. The Snow Song Realm was only an ordinary and remote middle star realm, and it wasn't very well known either. But since the time Mu Xuanian took the reins, more and more people started to know about the Snow Song Realm, and the name of Realm King Xuanian became far, far more known to others than the Snow Song Realm, and even the majority of the Realm Kings of Upper Star Realms. However, that absolutely didn't mean that Honorable Kui would give face to Realm King Xuanian, because he was none other than Honorable Kui. He is the direct disciple of Realm King Xuanian. Honorable Kui's expression was as stiff and cold as ever, and his gaze was still chilly as well. Has Realm King Xuanian also become blind to accept such a despicable person as her direct disciple? The moment he said these words, Honorable Kui suddenly saw seriousness emerge in the abnormally calm pupils of Xianxia. A malevolent aura emitted from him. Do not insult my master. Him letting out a low roar directly in Honorable Kui's face made all the people stare at him with eyes wide open. Everyone from the Snow Song Realm was so aghast that their faces lost color. Mu Bingyun said in a hurried voice, Xianxia, silence. The audience of the conferred god stage were dumbfounded. They never thought that Xianxia would dare to berate Honorable Kui. Even Honorable Kui himself was stupefied. Xianxia, however, turned a deaf ear to the words of Mu Bingyun, and his eyes were staring directly at Honorable Kui. After arriving at the God realm, Mu Xuanian had taught him a lesson several times, which certainly helped in restraining his temper a lot. Before arriving at the Eternal Heaven realm, Mu Xuanian had repeatedly warned him not to get into trouble. But when the words of insult for Mu Xuanian came from the mouth of Honorable Kui, his fury and malevolent aura instantly began to reach their peak, like an ignited volcano, unable to be constrained any longer. Perhaps he hadn't realized it himself, but at some point in time, Mu Xuanian had become another reverse scale for him. It's something I did on my own. Why does it have anything to do with master? What reason and qualification do you have to insult my master? Bingyun turned pale in fright. As for Mu Huanji and others, they were horrified beyond words. It's over. It's truly over for him this time. Hu Ruli started blankly at the scene unfolding before him. Oh, this boy is quite interesting, huh? God Emperor Shishin looked at Xianxia with interest while holding his chin between his finger and thumb. Interesting? HMPH. His origin is lowly, his means are despicable, and he is also so ignorant and wildly arrogant. He should be glad that he is in the Eternal Heaven realm. Otherwise, if it was in any other star realm, he would have already died a brutal death 10,000 times. The star god emperor snorted. Ha! Honorable Kui let out a faint laugh, however. It made all people feel a chilly sensation permeating to the marrow of their bones. Despite doing something so despicable and committing such a great crime, not only do you not feel ashamed of it or bowed your head in remorse, but you actually still dare to be so presumptuous. Great crime? Since he had already talked back to the other party once, he didn't bother to care about his choice of words any longer. My means were certainly despicable, and so I could only blame myself for being laughed at and despised by all. But I want to ask you something. What great crime are you talking about? Ha! To employ a despicable method of cheating would be considered a great crime in all the places of the boundless universe. Doing such a thing at the profound God convention is simply looking down upon the Eternal Heaven realm and all the profound practitioners of my Eastern divine region. which makes your crime even more loathsome and unpardonable as well. You actually still have the face to argue against your deed being called a grave crime. Argue? Why would I need to do that? Xianxia furiously roared in a heavy voice. It was clearly announced in the rules of the preliminary rounds that every person will be completely projected with everything they had on them, and there were no restrictions on the use of weapons, profound items, or other means. The ranking was to be determined on the basis of the final number of soul orbs in one's possession. It's indeed true that my means were contemptible, but I didn't in the least violate the rules of the competition. You can ridicule and rebuke me for choosing such a method, but what reason do you have to call it cheating and claim that I have committed a great crime? Honorable Kui was clearly taken aback. He could not think of anything to say in reply for a brief while. The voice of eternal heaven had not only resounded in the projection world inside the eternal heaven pearl, but it could also be heard quite clearly in the world outside. Thinking back to it now, when the voice of eternal heaven announced the rules, it certainly mentioned in a clear manner. There are no restrictions on the weapons, profound items, or other means. Xianxia could manage to stand here by precisely relying on his means. Although his deed was contemptible, if they were to consider the announcement of the voice of eternal heaven, he definitely hadn't violated any rules. Not only was Honorable Hui astounded for a short while, but even the eternal heaven god emperor and others were all slightly surprised. Everyone at the conferred god stage was also looking at each other. If I had truly violated the rules of the competition, I'd have been naturally disqualified by the eternal heaven pearl and expelled immediately. But I safely passed the 2 rounds and am now standing here, which means that the eternal heaven pearl acknowledges my ranking too. So just what reason could you have to say that I committed a great crime? These words of Xianxia caused the heart of Bingyun to instantly fall into the abyss, and her face turned deathly pale. Because, no matter how reasonable Xianxia sounded, or how just and fair his words were, he touched on the greatest taboo of the eternal heaven god realm of all things. Eternal heaven pearl? What impertinence! The faces of all the people of the eternal heaven realm became gloomy, and Honorable Kui flew into a rage. Despicable Junior, you first looked down upon the profound God convention, and then dare to presumptuously talk about the eternal heaven pearl, instead of admitting to your guilt and repenting for it. You simply are extremely audacious and an unpardonable person. How outrageous! The eyes of the eternal heaven god emperor also darkened a bit. This scoundrel thing actually dared to try using the name of the eternal heaven pearl to hide his shameful deed. His audaciousness knows no bounds. An elder from eternal heaven realm roared in anger. Honorable Kui, there's no need to act according to convention and waste your time and energy arguing with this despicable junior. At once destroy his cultivation and kick him out of the eternal heaven realm. He is simply asking for it. Nothing can save him now. I didn't think there would actually be someone so wildly arrogant and ignorant. Today it could be said that my horizons have been broadened. A person walked out of the group of the heaven-chosen children. He bowed towards Honorable Kui before saying in a solemn voice, Honorable Kui, we were fortunate to become the heaven-chosen children. We applied each and everything that we learned in our lives of cultivation in the battles we fought, and walked every step on the battlefield in fear, not daring to relax even for a moment. It was only then that we were able to get such special glory. Who would have thought that such a lowly villain would worm his way into our ranks? Not only did he bring disgrace to the name of the heaven-chosen children, this junior also feels insulted by him. I request Honorable Kui to severely punish this lowly villain to give us justice. The speaker was dressed in white clothes, which looked extremely similar to Luo Changsheng's. As for his identity, he was none other than the son of the great Holy Eve's realm king, and Luo Changsheng's elder brother, who was born of the same father and mother as Luo Changsheng, Luo Chang'an. Luo Chang'an also had an extremely high talent and cultivation, and had a great reputation in the eastern divine region. But ever since Luo Changsheng started to show his ability, he completely stopped getting attention from others. However, he didn't seem to mind, and remained as brazen and arrogant as before. Contrary to what one would expect, he was very respectful to his younger brother Luo Changsheng, and always followed his words. Furthermore, he was proud of his identity as the elder brother of Luo Changsheng. For such a despicable person to enter the conferred God stage is far worse than an insult to us, heaven-chosen children. He is simply the shame of our eastern divine region's profound cultivating world. So what if he is the direct disciple of realm King Xuanian? He must be punished severely. The conferred god stage was thrown into disorder because of Xianxia. Princess Keizai opened her lips wide and clenched her hands. She felt anxious and alarmed in her heart but didn't dare to say anything. He, still, hasn't changed in the least. Jasmine's muttering, which sounded as if she was daydreaming, reached her ears at this moment. That's enough. Honorable Kui waved his arm to silence all the voices that could be heard from here and there as he stared daggers at Xianxia. It was only on extremely few occasions that he would get angry, because that would influence his judgment and cause him to stray from the path of absolute fairness. But facing Xianxia, he was truly angered. Xianxia, you are young, so committing mistakes is unavoidable. So long as you acknowledged your wrongdoing and received proper punishment, you might have been pardoned. However, you insisted on, it's not that I didn't acknowledge my mistake, rather I honestly confessed everything. Xianxia interrupted him with a heavy voice. It was you who insisted on insulting my master. How can I, Xianxia, admit my guilt to the person who insulted my master? Impudence! Honorable Kui flared up even more, and his raised brows seemed like two sharp swords. As the leader of the adjudicators of eternal heaven, even the king of a realm would be careful in front of him and act like a yes-man. He never thought that youth who hadn't even reached the age of 30 would dare speak so audaciously about his adjudication. You committed the despicable act of cheating and caused disturbance at the profound God convention, which in itself is a great crime. Then, you vainly tried to hide your wrongdoing by using the name of the eternal heaven pearl, which further added to your initial crime. There is no way you can be forgiven now. Even if Realm King Xuanian were here today, you wouldn't have a chance to be saved. Honorable Kui's anger was unimaginably fearsome, which made all the realm kings at the conferred god stage not dare to say another word. His gaze suddenly moved horizontally as he looked behind Xianxia. There is one more person who needs to be punished. Get the hell out here on your own. Honorable Kui was naturally talking about the person who helped Xianxia cheat. The moment Honorable Kui finished his words, as if he was struck by lightning, Wu Geik immediately began to shake intensely, before his legs went weak and he directly kneeled on the ground. He said in a trembling voice, Junior knows his mistake. I was forced to comply. I. Everyone was greatly surprised to see Wu Geik suddenly kneeling, paralyzed on the ground. Who didn't know the name of Wu Geik? They didn't think even in their dreams that after the stern, scolding voice of Honorable Kui, it would actually be the son of the divine martial realm king to appear before them. Wu Sanzun, the divine martial realm king, was sitting in his place in a carefree manner. When he saw this scene and was stunned for a moment, before his face contorted instantly, as if someone had suddenly smeared shit on his face. He stood up and pointed at Wu Geik with a shivering finger. Care, you. Royal father, your child truly didn't do it intentionally. Your child was coerced otherwise, even if... Shut up. The internal organs of Wu Sanzun were on the verge of bursting apart with rage. He could guess even with his butt that Xianxia had certainly gotten some extremely great dirt on Wu Geik. His chest was moving up and down as he publicly cursed him in anger. You unfilial son, you idiot. Even if he was extremely furious, Wu Geik was, in the end, the son he had been most proud of these past years. Moreover, it was currently the critical time for him to soon enter the eternal heaven divine realm. Wu Sanzun took a deep breath, and then said ashamedly to Honorable Kui, Honorable Kui, due to Sanzun improperly educating his child, he ended up committing such a great mistake. But he only did so because he was coerced by a villain. Furthermore, no need to say anything. Honorable Kui waved off his hand as he cut off Wu Sanzun's words. He said in a cold voice, Wu Geik, as a profound practitioner, you should absolutely not lose your conscience and sense of honor, even if you have yet to reach the true heights of the profound way. As the distinguished son of a realm king, how could you commit such a great mistake at the profound God convention? Do you have the least bit sense of the honor and dignity of the son of a realm king and a profound practitioner of the divine way? Although he was being shouted at and cursed in front of everyone, Wu Geik, of course, didn't behave as stupidly as Xianxia. He heavily kneeled down once again, with the upper half of his body bent forward completely, as he said in a sobbing voice, Wu Geik is aware of the great mistake he has committed and apologizes to Royal Father and all the seniors here. Also, Wu Geik doesn't have the face to be a heaven-chosen child any longer. Wu Geik requests Honorable Kui to punish him. No matter the severity of the punishment, Wu Geik will absolutely not complain about it. HMPH. Although you committed a great mistake, you are not the main culprit after all. You will have to receive the punishment you deserve, but it will not be as bad as expelling you from the ranks of the heaven-chosen children." His words made Wu Geik, who had his upper half bent forward, secretly reveal happiness on his face. Wu Sanzan also let out a long breath of relief. "As for the punishment you will receive to discipline you, we will talk about it later." Honorable Kui's gaze suddenly returned to Yun Qi. He slowly lifted his arm as his voice became several times colder. "Yun Qi, this honored one will ask you for the last time. Do you admit your guilt?" "Heh ha 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 ha." Before Yun Qi could reply, an untimely, ear-piercing laugh resounded across the place all of a sudden. In the eastern seating area, God Emperor Shishin was leaning backward in his seat, as he laughed aloud without stopping. As one of the God Emperors of the southern divine region, one could imagine the terrifying level of his profound cultivation. His laugh contained absolutely tyrannical penetrating power, and directly shook the eardrums and souls of all the people to such an extent that they began to crazily quiver together. The movement of Honorable Kui stagnated as well, with his whole body going stiff. "Ah, how marvelous, how funny!" As all the people looked at him in amazement, God Emperor Shishin raised his hands high while laughing loudly, as if there was no one else present other than him. His wild laugh as well as his words carried completely undisguised ridicule. "In vain did I always believe the eternal heaven pearl to be an unparalleled holy thing in this world. So it wasn't all that special after all. Tusk, tusk, tusk." The conferred God stage became deathly silent in an instant. First, all the people of the eternal heaven realm were stunned, after which each and every one of them burst into anger. Yun Qi only mentioning the eternal heaven pearl to absolve himself of the crime was enough to be deemed committing a taboo in the eternal heaven realm, and God Emperor Shishin's remark was very clearly him disdaining the eternal heaven pearl. Honorable Kui suddenly turned around. His face had abruptly darkened, but given the great identity of God Emperor Shishin, it was not his place to berate him. Kang Shishin, no matter how much self-restraint the eternal heaven God Emperor had, seeing God Emperor Shishin say such words, he also exploded with anger. "I have showed respect to you as a guest and treated you in the most proper manner possible. You actually dared to insult and belittle the eternal heaven pearl. Do you truly think that my eternal heaven realm can be easily bullied?" This king insulted and belittled the eternal heaven pearl. This king doesn't understand what you are talking about. Kang Shishin stopped smiling happily as earlier. He closed his long and narrow eyes halfway as he said with a cold, mocking smile, "Aren't you guys yourselves belittling and insulting the eternal heaven pearl?" He stretched out his hand as he pointed directly at Yun Qi, and said in a voice that shook the firmament, "This boy called Yun Qi passed the first 2 preliminary rounds of the Profound God Convention, under the effect of the rules determined by the eternal heaven pearl. He also made it into the top 1,000 overall list, under the recognition of the eternal heaven pearl. He was sent here too, which could only mean that it was undoubtedly a result approved by the eternal heaven pearl. However, you guys kept on saying words of righteousness and fairness and determined that he despicably cheated and hence committed a great crime. Not only do you want to expel him from the ranks of the heaven-chosen children, seeing the attitude of you people, it would be considered a lighter punishment if this boy is only disabled. Huh. Tusk, tusk, tusk. Your eternal heaven realm is truly so mighty and domineering. Not only do you completely disregard the rules laid down by the eternal heaven pearl and the result it determined, you even twisted the result obtained by following those very rules into a great crime. Such a thing is far worse than belittling and insulting it. You simply don't give a shit about the wishes of the eternal heaven pearl and still want to say that this king is the one insulting and belittling it. Hee, tusk, tusk, tusk. This whole thing was truly an eye-opener for this king, and gave me the opportunity to laugh my head off. Ha 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 ha. Kang Shishin, you... Indignation surfaced on the face of eternal heaven God Emperor. He wanted to angrily rebuke him, but the moment he opened his mouth, he couldn't come up with any words to say in rebuttal, because each and every word of ridicule from Kang Shishin was actually an indisputable fact. What about me? Facing the clearly enraged eternal heaven God Emperor, he raised his brows. Could it be that this king has said something incorrect? In this profound God convention, any sort of means can be used, and only the final result will be taken into consideration. Don't tell me this isn't the rule that the eternal heaven pearl specifically decided on. Don't tell me that the one seeing the boy Yun Qi, who followed this rule as someone who committed a great crime, is not you all from the eternal heaven realm. Don't tell me that the one determining this boy to be one of the top 1,000 rankers is not the eternal heaven pearl. Don't tell me that the one that sent this boy to this place is not the eternal heaven pearl. Don't tell me that the one forcibly denying this result, and even calling it the disgrace of the profound way, is not the bunch of you people from the eternal heaven realm. God Emperor Xishan spread opened his arms. If this king has said anything wrong, I hope that the eternal heaven God Emperor will be generous enough to correct me. The instant God Emperor Xishan finished his words, the conferred stage became absolutely silent all of a sudden. Soon after, an incomparably awkward scene played out. As the eternal heaven God Emperor looked angrily at Kang Xishan, but wasn't able to utter a word for a long while. It was obvious that he had no words to refute him, because contrary to what one expected, each of his remarks was evidently a fact. The preliminaries of the profound God convention were held inside the eternal heaven pearl, and the rules that were in effect during the competition were set by the eternal heaven pearl, too. Everything up to and including the end result were all decided by the eternal heaven pearl. The voice of eternal heaven announced the rule that there were no restrictions on the use of means, and Xianxia being sent to this place was certainly only because of the decision made by the eternal heaven pearl as well. But Xianxia's profound strength was just at the first level of the divine tribulation realm. It was impossible for him to have passed the 2 rounds by relying on his true strength. It was an indisputable fact that he had cheated, which certainly was looking down upon the profound God convention and unfair to other profound practitioners. But unexpectedly, going according to the rules that were set by the eternal heaven pearl, the method Xianxia employed truly couldn't be considered to be violating the rules. Xianxia had also defended himself by bringing up the same point just a while ago, however. Not only were his words ignored, his crime became even bigger due to mentioning the eternal heaven pearl in his defense. Xianxia was a nobody from the lower realm, as well as someone who was confirmed to have cheated. How was it possible for anyone to be foolish enough to speak in defense of such a villain, who was despised by everyone in front of the eternal heaven realm? Even Bingyun, who was trying her best to defend Xianxia, would definitely not dare to mention the 3 words, eternal heaven pearl. But to the surprise of all, these words coming from the mouth of God Emperor Xishan repeatedly mentioned the eternal heaven pearl, leaving the eternal heaven God Emperor speechless and hating his guts. Xianxia, ha ha ha. Seeing the eternal heaven God Emperor unable to come up with anything, God Emperor Xishan narrowed his eyes and began to laugh. Since the eternal heaven God Emperor doesn't have anything to say to correct me, it means that the words of this king are not wrong, right? Tusk, you guys of the eternal heaven realm didn't care about the eternal heaven pearl from the very beginning. And this king just made a remark. It isn't anything special. If we are talking about insulting and belittling the eternal heaven pearl, this king is nowhere close to you guys. Besides, this rule set by the eternal heaven pearl is really good. On a true battlefield, one shouldn't be choosy about their means, as the winner will be the one respected in the end. Although this boy named Xianxia has insignificant profound strength, he managed to coerce the son of a realm king into obediently giving in to him, despite having the strength of only the late stages of divine spirit realm. Such an ability is better than merely having a strong profound strength. As such, entering the ranks of the heaven-chosen children of the eastern divine region is quite reasonable and fair. If we insist on assessing the strength of a person based on their cultivation of profound way, we can just directly rank them according to the level of their profound strengths. What would be the meaning in holding the profound God convention? Kang Xishan, the eternal heaven God Emperor said as he put great effort into restraining himself. Someone like you from the southern divine region doesn't need to concern himself with the matters of my eastern divine region. Oh, his Emperor Kang Xishan let out a long sigh. This king thought that given the self-restraint and broad-mindedness of you, the eternal heaven God Emperor, you would acknowledge your mistake and rectify it. After this, king reminded you of the rules set by the eternal heaven pearl. That would have somehow proved that it was only your brain not functioning well temporarily, and it's not that you truly don't give a shit about the eternal heaven pearl. But in the end, you brought up the eastern divine region in order to scare this king. Oh, this king is so scared now. God Emperor Xishan narrowed his eyes as he sighed faintly. Eternal heaven God Emperor, this king has always respected you. I hope you don't do anything that will make this king begin to look down on you. The guardians, elders, and adjudicators of the eternal heaven realm were already mostly in a standing position, and each of them had a gloomy face. The eternal heaven god realm had supreme prestige in the eastern divine region, and even in the entire god realm, it was an existence of no comparison. It was the first time for it to feel so angry and uncomfortable. The eternal heaven realm didn't fear anyone, and naturally they weren't afraid of Xianxia either. Regardless of his means, they would absolutely not be afraid of him. But who would have expected that? Xianxia would use the eternal heaven pearl to ridicule them. Moreover, each and every word of his was a fact. Refuting his words would mean refuting the eternal heaven pearl. How could they do that? At the conferred god stage, all the experts of the eastern divine region had a look of surprise on their faces, and the expressions in their eyes looking at Xianxia had undergone an intense change. Xianxia was ranked second among the 4 great god emperors of the southern divine region, having a standing equivalent to the eternal heaven god emperor of the eastern divine region. It was rumored that he was an extremely powerful individual. Today, they had truly witnessed the might of this god emperor Xianxia. "Ha, please don't quibble, you two." A faint laugh, like a divine voice from the celestial palace, instantly dispersed the incomparably oppressive atmosphere without a trace. The dragon monarch turned around to face the 2 respected god emperors. Could you hear a few words of this dragon? The eternal heaven god emperor, whose mind was influenced due to his sudden anger, and hadn't yet had the opportunity to give vent to it, immediately nodded his head, as if he had seen a bright light in the darkness. I asked the dragon monarch to give his guidance. The dragon monarch was a tremendously experienced and intelligent being. How could he not make out that God Emperor Xianxia was absolutely not arguing in such a manner to defend Yunqi against an injustice? He simply had an extremely good subject to ridicule and annoy the eternal heaven realm, or perhaps the whole eastern divine region. It had to be said that this move of Xianxia's was certainly quite insidious. If the eternal heaven realm didn't change its ruling in the case of Yunqi, it would be confirmed that they were looking down upon the eternal heaven pearl, going against the rule and result determined by it, and blaspheming the holy thing that oversaw their realm, as well as the existence they had the highest faith in. But if the punishment of Yunqi was cancelled due to such reasons, and his identity as a heaven-chosen child was acknowledged, the previously spoken words of the eternal heaven realm would no doubt be a slap to its own face. However, this wasn't the critically important point, because if they dealt with the situation properly, it would instead make the eternal heaven realm seem as broad-minded as the sky. But for a profound practitioner of just the first level of the divine tribulation realm to be able to make it into the top 1,000 at the profound God convention of the vast eastern divine region, and then to finally be sent to the eternal heaven divine region, where every spot was extremely precious. If it were to spread out, it would absolutely become a gargantuan laughingstock. Therefore, no matter what choice the eternal heaven realm made, it was going to be incomparably hard for it to accept the following consequences. Sweeping his gaze over the face of God Emperor Xianxia, the dragon monarch said with a faint smile, "Yunqi used an unusual method to obtain a rank that does not match his true strength. His deed is certainly against the dignity of the profound way and deserves to be disdained. But God Emperor Xianxia hasn't said anything wrong either. Although he has indeed violated the dignity of the profound way, he didn't violate the rules of the profound God convention. Therefore, in this dragon's opinion, Yunqi deserves to be despised, but he should not be punished, and instead be allowed to continue participating in the profound God convention until the end. As for whether he could eventually enter the eternal heaven divine realm," the dragon monarch smiled faintly, "that would require the joint decision of the eternal heaven God Emperor and the eternal heaven pearl. When the time comes, we will just need to once again inquire about the will of the eternal heaven pearl." The eternal heaven God Emperor considered his words for a brief moment, after which he had a sudden realization in his heart. His anger disappeared completely, as he said in great admiration, "The words of the dragon monarch could not be more right. The way we were dealing with Yunqi just now was certainly quite inappropriate. Hence, we will do as the dragon monarch has said." All the people of the eternal heaven realm also had their eyes brighten, and they felt greatly relaxed in their hearts. The words of the dragon monarch sounded as if he was complying with the wish of the god Emperor Xishan to acknowledge his rank and not to punish him. But in reality, there was another deep meaning to his words. His intention was to let Xianxia remain in the Profound God Convention and continue to participate in the next competition. However, given his strength, he would definitely be eliminated in the third round of preliminaries, and so it was even more impossible for him to have anything to do with the final conferred God battle. It basically meant that his presence would absolutely not influence the following competitions of the Profound God Convention in the least. They might have acknowledged his qualification to participate further in the Profound God Convention. But as for the qualification for entering the Eternal Heaven-Divine Realm, the thing that mattered the most, Dragon Monarch's words, that would require the joint decision of the Eternal Heaven God Emperor and the Eternal Heaven Pearl. When the time comes, we will just need to once again inquire about the will of the Eternal Heaven Pearl. We're extremely ingenious. He was the Dragon Monarch, after all. In such a short time, he got the Eternal Heaven Realm out of their predicament with just a few words. As expected of His Majesty to say such convincing words. God Emperor Kang Shishan let out a light laugh. He took his seat as he sat leaning sideways and didn't say another word. Kui, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor said in a solemn tone, although Xianxia's means were despicable, it hasn't violated the rules of the competition. We have condemned and reprimanded him enough already, so there is no need to severely punish him. Also, there is no need to cancel his qualifications to participate in the Profound God Convention, and that will apply in Wu Geik's case too. Yes, Honorable Kui accepted the order, after which he coldly reproved, Xianxia, Wu Geik, stand down. Wu Geik expresses his gratitude for the forgiveness of Honorable Kui. Wu Geik quickly stepped back with a terrified look on his face, but actually he had been feeling quite calm in his heart. Xianxia remained standing for a while as he stared blankly ahead. He gave a deep glance at Honorable Kui and also returned to the group of the 1,000 youngsters. However, as he came back, the heaven-chosen children that were standing close to him moved away at once with a deep expression of disdain on their faces. Let alone Xianxia's despicable means. His origin and cultivation alone were enough to make him unfit to be standing in the same place as them. The way everything happened was far beyond Xianxia's expectations too. His gaze and spirit sense had been constantly searching for Jasmine's existence, but he hadn't found the slightest trace of her. It made him uncontrollably think of the worst outcome. Jasmine hasn't come to the Eternal Heaven Realm. Bingyun had also warned him a lot of times about things turning out in just such a way. The Profound God Convention was the sole opportunity for him to see the heavenly slaughter star god. But it was no more than a possibility in the end. It depended on his luck, or more precisely, the will of heaven, whether or not she would participate in the Profound God Convention. Jasmine, did she not come? Will all my great efforts this whole time end up for naught? Kui, that matter will be deemed taken care of for now. Do not bring it up again before the end of the Profound God Convention, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor said. At the moment, so many outstanding heroes have gathered together here, so we will prioritize the proper execution of the Profound God Convention. He turned around to look towards the Eternal Heaven Tower that was towering 15,000 kilometers into the sky. Let's begin the third round of preliminaries. Kui slightly nodded his head, and the aura of anger emitting from him settled down little by little. After a moment, there was only his iron-hard stateliness left, and he didn't spare Xianxia another glance. You have all passed the 2 rounds of preliminaries in succession, and received the glory of becoming the heaven-chosen children, which is already proof of your strength and means. But the true Profound God Convention will start at this instant. Although you all are young, I believe you should have heard of the highlight of every session of the Profound God Convention, the Conferred God Battle. That is the battle of highest honor, which truly belongs to the young experts, and symbolizes the most powerful, profound strength of the younger generation of our Eastern Divine region. Moreover, only 32 people will get to participate in the Conferred God Battle. Following Honorable Hui's powerful and cold words, the attention of everyone gradually shifted back to the Profound God Convention once again. Those heaven-chosen children, in particular, had their blood boiling over. Next, we have the third round of preliminaries, which will determine the people with the qualifications to participate in the Conferred God Battle. In other words, among the 1,000 of you, only 32 can emerge victorious. The other 968 people will have to take their leave from the Profound God Convention. Gulp, many young profound practitioners felt their whole body becoming taut, and their throats moving up and down. The next fight was undoubtedly going to be a fierce fight in the true sense, because standing beside everyone was an extremely fearsome opponent who could make it into the ranks of the heaven-chosen children, except for Xianxia. It was easily imaginable how difficult it was going to be to dash into the ranks of top 32 from the midst of the 1,000 heaven-chosen children. Your battlefield for the third round will be... Honorable Kui turned to his side as he lifted his head and looked up at the eternal heaven tower, which was connecting the land with the firmament. None other than this eternal heaven-divine tower. Tower was right at the center of the eternal heaven God realm. It wasn't really a true existence, but a projection from the eternal heaven pearl. It was rumored, since before the profound God convention, that one of the rounds of the competition would be held inside the eternal heaven tower. However, all the heaven-chosen children still found it difficult to suppress their excitement upon hearing the words of Honorable Kui. Although it was only an illusory tower, it was the highest level and the holiest existence in the entire eastern divine region. Would it be fine to assume that we avoided a calamity? In the seating area of the Snow Song realm, Mu Huanji and the rest were in no mood to pay attention to the next round of the profound God convention. They had initially thought that there was no way out left for them when things settled down all of a sudden. Mu Huanji hadn't come back to himself even after a long while. Mu Bingyun shook her head as she said with a faint sigh, "Elder sister's concern was indeed right. It's like he is simply possessed by an evil spirit. He acted the same way when he met her for the first time, and now in the eternal heaven God realm, he did it once again. I suppose that he won't ever be able to truly restrain himself in his life." No need to worry. Having been ridiculed by God Emperor Shishan, and with the Dragon Monarch stating his opinion, Xianxia will be fine, at least in the eternal heaven realm. However, Yan Juhai shook his head. I'm afraid that it is going to be hard for Xianxia to live in the eastern divine region. Once the profound God convention ends, you had better quickly take him back to the Snow Song realm. It'd be for the best if he doesn't leave the Snow Song realm before attaining a great achievement in the practice of the profound way. Mu Huanji considered his words before nodding with a sigh. In the third round of preliminaries, it will be your complete projections still that are going to be sent to the battlefield. No one was surprised in the least by the words of Honorable Kui. The true eternal heaven tower was inside the eternal heaven divine realm, and the one present outside was no more than its enormous projection. Therefore, it was natural that only projections could enter inside it. You will be sent to the first floor of the eternal heaven divine tower, and your aim will be to get to the 300th floor. Every floor will have a powerful profound beast and a profound shadow guarding it. With each floor you advance to, the profound beasts and profound shadows that you will have to face will also increase in number or be even more powerful, making it more difficult for you to advance further. The rule to emerge victorious is very simple. The first 32 profound practitioners to reach the 300th floor will be able to enter the final, conferred God battle. The rule was certainly simple and clear that the winners and losers would be decided by whoever made it to the 300th floor first. But the battlefield in question was the eternal heaven divine tower, and the ones entering it were the 1,000 heaven-chosen children. It was obvious that although getting to the 300th floor seemed quite simple, it would definitely be absolutely difficult to do. Wait a moment. Honorable Kui had just finished his words when a lazy voice resounded all of a sudden in very impolite manner. God Emperor Shishan said sluggishly, "This king has something to remind you about the third round of preliminaries. It'd be for the best if you mention all the methods that can and cannot be used in this round in full detail. Otherwise, it would be unsightly if by chance someone won while complying to the rules, and was then unexpectedly killed by some absurd person." The eternal heaven God Emperor had an angry look on his face, but he didn't lash out at him. Honorable Kui slightly lowered his brows. He didn't reply to God Emperor Shishan, but the tone of his voice became heavier. You will still be in complete projection state in this round inside the eternal heaven divine tower. The only rule inside the eternal heaven tower is that the first 32 people to reach the 300th floor will be considered the winners. Besides this, there is no other rule. Hui said the last 5 words in an extremely heavy voice. It was obvious that they were directed to God Emperor Shishan. You can use anything you have on you as you wish, be it any weapon, profound armor, profound items, or profound formation. There is absolutely no restriction on the means. If perhaps you want to use some kind of shameful method, that will be completely fine as well. But there are a few things that this honored one must warn you about. Honorable Kui lowered his brows as he slowly said, "First, the space inside the Eternal Heaven Tower is extremely special, and even a high-level spatial profound item will not be able to pierce through it. Such a thing will be completely impossible to do with your own profound strength. I advise you all to at once abandon the thought of using spatial profound items to directly bypass any floors. Second, this honored one would suggest you not to dodge the profound beasts and profound shadows, and forcibly make your way up. Because once the profound beasts and profound shadows sense your auras, they will chase you all the way until you meet your death. Trying to forcibly go up to the next floor by evading the profound beasts will only get you in a situation where you will be attacked from front and rear, effectively digging your own grave. Once you die, although you will be able to revive, the place of your revival will be 10 floors below the one where you died. Furthermore, all the profound beasts and profound shadows of these 10 floors will revive when you do. As for preventing yourselves from being sensed by the profound beasts and profound shadows, humph. That is indeed a good idea, but it's a pity that the terrain of every floor inside the Eternal Heaven Tower has nothing in common with the others, and is extremely complicated. It's basically a pipe dream to wish to not be sensed before finding the exit to go to the next floor. Third, the chilly gaze of Honorable Kui clearly stabbed through Xianxia. Don't dream of having someone else lend their strength. Each of you will be sent to a completely separate space inside the projection of the Eternal Heaven Tower. In other words, your battlefields will be completely isolated from each other's. No one can interfere with anyone else. You can solely rely on yourself. It became noisy on the conferred God stage. Some were discussing the third round, others were extremely astonished, and there were even those who were secretly nodding their heads. The first and second round of preliminaries were quite affected by luck and randomness, because of the special rules of those rounds. Even Xianxia cheating in the manner he did wasn't truly considered a violation of rules, in the end. But the third round of preliminaries, as clearly stated by Honorable Kui, was a fierce competition in the truest sense, which would assess the true strength of the participants. They had to kill all the profound beasts they would come across while ascending the Eternal Heaven Tower, and forcibly attempting to flee from them would be equivalent to courting death. They were unable to use any spatial items, either. Moreover, the battlefield of every person would be completely separated from the others. No one could interfere with anyone else or seek their help. It was evident that the safest way to reach the 300th floor, or to be exact, the sole method to do so, was to completely kill the profound beasts and profound shadows on every floor, and with the fastest speed possible. It was only absolute strength that could accomplish such a thing. There was simply no possibility of cheating in this round. That was also the reason for Honorable Kui to directly roar out the words, "There is no other rule," without any hesitation. What can you actually do, even if we allow you to employ any methods? The gazes of many people, consciously or unconsciously, swept past Xianxia. There was no one who wasn't laughing in their heart, thinking about his meager, profound strength of the first level of divine tribulation realm. There were a total of 300 floors, and the difficulty to pass through would increase with every floor. The first few floors should be the easiest ones, and they were all basically guaranteed to make it through them. But given Xianxia's profound strength of just the first level of divine tribulation realm, it was unknown whether he could even pass through the first few easy floors. His results were obviously going to be the worst in the third round of preliminaries, with him ranking at the bottom of the list. Others would certainly go through extremely fierce fights and obtain a rare experience, even if they weren't able to enter the conferred God stage. But in Xianxia's case, he could only manage to become a joke. After all, only those with true powerful strength would have the qualifications to enter the conferred God battle, which was going to be held in the end. In the competition inside the Eternal Heaven Tower, Xianxia was bound to be a laughingstock. But the people from Snow Song Realm didn't have the composure to care about it. Bingyun in particular was hoping for the third round to end as soon as possible, and then at once leave the Eternal Heaven Realm with Xianxia and return to Snow Song. She had no interest in the conferred God battle, the highlight of the profound God convention. At this time, she could already imagine how furious Mu Xunian would be. She would be angry that Xianxia forcibly passed 2 rounds of preliminaries and exposed himself to the eyes of all the top-notch experts of the Eastern Divine region. She would be angry that Bingyun didn't watch over Xianxia in a proper manner. Before they left Snow Song, Xianxia had again instructed her to watch over Xianxia the whole time after his elimination, and not to let him leave her sight. It was precisely because she wanted others to pay as little attention to him as possible. Because Xianxia had secrets that absolutely couldn't be exposed to anyone. But no one thought that on hearing the rule that the loser would be expelled from the eternal heaven realm, Xianxia would have no choice but to successively pass 2 rounds, consequently becoming a heaven-chosen child, and causing a great disturbance at the profound God convention. Not only did he expose himself to others, he also nearly became the greatest focus. Bingyun could only pray earnestly that they would not have to face the worst outcome. "Do you have any doubts?" Honorable Kui scanned over everyone. Seeing that no one had anything to say, he waved his palm. White light descended from the sky all of a sudden and enveloped all the heaven-chosen children. "Your real bodies will stay here. Your consciousness and everything you have on you will be projected inside the eternal heaven tower. The winners will enter the conferred God battle, and the losers will watch their battles from the conferred God stage. Also, everything you do inside the eternal heaven tower will also be completely projected here. Go now. Heaven-chosen children, display the utmost limit of your strength to your heart's content. Prove that you have the qualifications to be conferred the title of God." Clank. The gazes of the heaven-chosen children, who were covered in white light, suddenly became several times more serious. The figures of all of them were completely engulfed in the white light, making it impossible to get a clear view of them. At the same time, 1,000 streaks of starlight soared into the sky as they carried the projections of all the heaven-chosen children and flew into the eternal heaven tower. Rays of light faintly flashed on the eternal heaven tower. In a split second, 1,000 more streaks of light fell from the sky and dropped onto the conferred God stage with equal distance between them, like a rapidly falling meteor, before transforming into images. These images had the same background, and the only thing different about them was the human figures standing at the center of the images. These human figures were none other than the 1,000 heaven-chosen children. They were now present inside the eternal heaven tower. The images were displaying the starting point inside the eternal heaven tower, floor 0. As the battle inside the eternal heaven tower began, Jasmine's gaze also shifted away at this time. Afterwards, she unexpectedly turned around quietly. "Keijai, follow me." Leaving behind a few cold words, her figure had flown far into the distance. Keijai bit her lip before fearfully following after her. Jasmine was in the front and Keijai behind her. They left the region of the eternal heaven realm and continued to fly until they reached very far away. It was only then that Jasmine finally stopped in her tracks. Her back was facing Keijai as she remained standing still. "Big sis!" Keijai stood behind Jasmine as her hands tightly clenched the corners of her skirt. "R.I.P.?" A metallic sound rang out as an enormous sound isolation barrier covered them. It was at this time that Jasmine turned around and looked straight at Keijai with a surprisingly angry expression on her face. Her scarlet pupils quivered faintly, as they emitted a chilliness that was completely unfamiliar to Keijai. Big sis." Keijai unconsciously retreated a step backwards. The tip of her nose was wrinkled and she was on the verge of tears. She didn't understand it at all. Why was her elder sister so angry? "Keijai?" Jasmine's chest moved up and down. She was doing her best to suppress her emotions, but her voice still trembled a bit. "Tell me honestly just where and when did you meet him?" I more than 2 years ago, when Big Sis started secluded cultivation last time all of a sudden. I was bored and all alone, so I went out to play, then, accidentally, bumped into him." Keijai was someone who wasn't afraid of anything in the world. Except for her elder sister, Jasmine was the only one whom she considered family within her heart. She had never before seen her looking like this. Started secluded cultivation last time, 2 years ago, with countless torrents rising up and falling down in her heart. Jasmine was left speechless for a while. A long time later, she finally said in a heavy voice, "How did you met him and everything you know about him? Tell me all of it. Do not hide anything from me." Keijai repeatedly nodded like a chick pecking rice. "I'll tell you everything. I'll tell Big Sis everything." In front of the unusually angry Jasmine, Keijai didn't dare to pull the wool over her eyes. She told her each and everything that happened, arriving at the Darkia realm by chance and being rescued by the meddling of Xianxia. Afterwards, her paying attention to him upon finding that he could use Heavenly Wolf Slash and could also control ice and fire at the same time. Then she gradually confirmed his identity and got to know a little about his objectives, witnessing the hateful relationship between Xianxia and Black Soul Divine Sect, extorting the divine 9-star Buddha Jade from Wu Gaika, following Xianxia on his journey to obtain the immortal Emperor Grass. And so on. She told Jasmine everything in full detail. Jasmine was quietly listening to her without uttering a word until Xianxia anxiously finished telling her everything that she knew about Xianxia. It was then that her emotions erupted. Xianxia, you clearly know it all, so why did you hide it from me all this time? I didn't do it on purpose. There was sobbing in her voice. It's because Big Sis said that you wouldn't see him ever again in this life. And even if someday he arrived in the God realm, you'd still definitely not go to meet him. That's why I kept it a secret. Since you know that I won't meet him no matter what, why did you help him come to the eternal heaven realm? Why did you bring me to this place? Because I knew all along that Big Sis actually misses him a lot and really wants to meet him again. Xianxia raised her head. Her eyes were brimming with glistening teardrops. Big Sis always calls out his name whenever you are having a dream. Immediately, Jasmine's eyes became misty, but she shook her head in pain. Then do you know why I resolved not to meet him again, no matter what? Do you know the gravity of the trouble you have caused? God Jasmine stretched out her finger, and her voice became hoarse as she lost control over her emotions. He is the supreme king on his own planet, and there is nothing that could threaten him over there. He has his family members, friends, as well as his women in that place. He can live his whole life there without any sort of worries. But he is nobody in this place. Do you know how dangerous it is for him to be here? The more she spoke, the more agitated she became. Do you have any idea how many secrets he has? If even one of them were to be exposed, it would evoke greed in the people of the entire God realm. At that time, his life, the planet he comes from, and everything he has would be lost forever. Don't you know how powerful those people who can enter the eternal heaven realm are? This is the most dangerous place for him in the world where he shouldn't approach at all costs. If even one of those people were to sense any of his secrets, he would then be, do you understand now? Xianxia's body went taut. An unknown number of people have been investigating the place where I disappeared to during those years, and even more people haven't forgotten about me obtaining the evil god's indestructible blood, so if I were to meet him, and others discovered some clue to their queries, do you realize what would happen after that? This is just one of the many reasons why I can't meet him. Jasmine's breathing grew heavy. She seemed as if her soul was being drawn into terrifying waves. Big Sis, I know my mistake. Xianxia's eyes had become misty with tears. I only wanted to do something for Big Sis, to give you a pleasant surprise. I had no idea that it was going to be so dangerous. I truly understand my mistake. Xianxia, now that you have caused such a great trouble, you have to definitely promise me that you won't hide anything from me or make any decisions on your own. As for the reason, if you had immediately told me about you meeting him, there were so many ways to make him return to the planet he is from, and not to step again into the God realm. At least we could have prevented the situation from worsening in such a manner. But now, what can I do to deal with this blunder of yours? Jasmine's entire body was trembling. The two most important people in her life were Xianxia and Xianxia. Xianxia, receiving the inheritance of the heavenly wolf star god, had already shaken her so badly that she felt as if half of the sky had collapsed. Now she was even made to see Xianxia in such a situation. Big Sis, Xianxia carefully looked ahead as she said with teary eyes, I realize my wrongdoing. It's because I didn't listen to Big Sis's words. Don't be angry, okay? Maybe nothing of the sort that Big Sis is worried about will happen. Moreover, I believe that Big Sis certainly wanted to meet him again. Big Sis is so powerful, so you must have a lot of ways to meet him without being discovered by others. You don't understand. Jasmine slowly shook her head. You don't get him, you are still a child and lack the understanding of many things in this world. A large number of people have a different way of seeing things than yours, and there are a lot of matters that could turn out to be countless times crueler than you think. Jasmine turned away, so as to not let Xianxia see the wetness in her eyes, which she was finding difficult to keep in check. Xianxia, return to your star god palace at once, and shut yourself in to reflect upon your actions. You're not allowed to take a single step out without my permission. Xianxia opened her lips to say something, but then lowered her head silently. She said in a low voice, I understand. I'll properly reflect upon my actions, so Big Sis, don't be angry, okay? Flying a bit further away from Jasmine, Xianxia suddenly turned around again. She bit her lip before saying in a light tone, "Big sis, he is very, very similar to how you described him, the biggest idiot in this world. I intentionally made fun of him several times, but he kept saving me while risking his own life time and time again. All because I used Big Sister's name. Jasmine, he definitely knows how dangerous the God realm is. His sole purpose in arriving at the God realm was to look for Big Sis. To be able to meet Big Sis, he can truly put his life on the line without the slightest concern. Don't speak any further." Jasmine's back was trembling lightly. "Go back immediately and reflect upon your actions." Xianxia didn't dare say another word and lowered her beautiful neck. Her tender and fair fingers tightly clenched the waistband of her skirt as she obediently flew back to the star god realm. The moment Xianxia left, 2 streams of tears flowed down Jasmine's face, leaving wet trails behind. Following as if a dam had burst, tears poured down uncontrollably from her eyes. "Xianxia! Xianxia! Xianxia!" Her body crouched down as it curled up, as she repeatedly called out his name in a sobbing voice. Maybe no one would believe that the heavenly slaughter star god of the star god realm would actually have such a fragile side to her, and would cry in sadness like a weak girl. Far away, a gaze had been constantly watching Jasmine all this time, without shifting away even once. "The mind of the heavenly slaughter star god is so disordered that she hasn't discovered me even after such a long while. HMPH, it seems it was worth making this trip after all. Contrary to what I thought, the situation here is extremely interesting." "Xianxia!" Kayana Yinger took her eyes off from Jasmine as she lightly called out this name that completely didn't deserve to be remembered by her earlier. "This is more interesting than even the 9 profound, exquisite body." Inside the world of the Eternal Heaven Tower, all the profound practitioners that had entered it were present on floor 0. Although it was a tower, the world on every floor was unexpectedly vast. On floor 0 was a barren mountainous region, with short mountains everywhere that were 50 kilometers in width and several kilometers in height. There was a passage to floor 1 at the peak of a short mountain, but it was tightly shut by a stone gate. The surrounding area and location of all the profound practitioners were completely similar. The appearance of other floors and the profound beasts and profound shadows that were guarding them were also exactly the same. It could be said to be an absolutely fair competition. The images of all these things were perfectly projected on the conferred God stage. One could quite clearly see anyone they wanted to. Very soon, every participating profound practitioner came over to the passage leading to floor 1. They were waiting for the stone gate to open and preparing to rush inside floor 1 immediately. It was absolutely a race against time, and even Luo Chengxuan was not an exception. But there was still one exception among the participants. Xianxia. He was still standing at the place where he was sent to inside the Eternal Heaven Tower in the very beginning and hadn't budged an inch. His eyes were moving about, as he seemed to be thinking about something. This behavior of Xianxia made many people give a snort of contempt, but they weren't really surprised at it. It was because one had to rely on their own strength in this competition, and so no matter what he did, the result in the end was going to totally be the same. The 3rd round of preliminaries of the Eastern Divine Region's Profound God Convention, the voice of the Eternal Heaven, resounded across the conferred God stage once again. "Begins now!" Boom, boom, boom. The stone gates leading to floor 1 of the 1,000 identical and completely separated battlefields opened at the same time. Immediately, the whole group of profound practitioners who had been accumulating their power all this time dashed straight to floor 1, like an arrow leaving the bow string. It was still only Xianxia who pretended as if he hadn't heard anything and remained unconcerned. However, no one was looking condescendingly at him any longer. Instead, people were staring fixedly at the profound practitioners of their star realms, and even more were watching those true experts who were bound to be conferred the title of God. Entering floor 1 of the Eternal Heaven Tower was similar to stepping into another world. This place wasn't barren like the one before. On the contrary, there was a jade-green jungle here, with birds singing and the fragrance of flowers drifting in the wind, as well as a myriad of trees reaching high into the sky. But before the profound practitioners could fully appreciate the scenery in front of their eyes, a profound shadow with astonishing aura burst out of the jade-green trees and appeared before them. The profound shadow was holding a double-edged blade. Its body was jade-green, allowing it to hide itself well in the surrounding environment, and its attacks were incomparably ruthless, as it aimed directly for the vital parts in an attempt to kill with a single strike. It was even more astonishing to discover that its profound strength had actually reached the first level of divine spirit realm. Such a discovery was truly shocking to everyone. If a profound shadow of the first level of divine spirit realm could appear on floor 1, it was simply impossible to imagine how fearsome it was going to be on the higher floors. Earlier, there were still some people who were sniggering and guessing that even someone with as shitty a profound strength as Xianxia, who was only able to worm his way into the list of the top 1,000 by using a despicable method, would also be able to pass through the first few floors, where victory should be guaranteed. But now it seemed that he wouldn't even make it through floor 1. Each of the profound practitioners who had entered the Eternal Heaven Tower was an indisputable top-notch expert. Furthermore, they were on their guard after entering the floor. Therefore, although they were startled, their minds were in a calm state. They ingeniously avoided the enemy's attacks and instantly launched their own. Watching the graceful bearing of these young, profound practitioners being displayed at the same instant, all the experts of the Eastern Divine region felt quite stunned. Unconsciously, they nodded their heads simultaneously in commendation. Floor 1 only had a profound shadow of the first level of divine spirit realm, which was very easy to deal with. All the profound practitioners followed the aura around them, as they rushed to the entrance to floor 2 with their fastest speed, one after another. Floor 2 was a desert, which was being guarded by an earth attribute profound beast of the first level of divine spirit realm. It was a bit difficult to pass through this floor due to the special environment, but it was still easy for the participating profound practitioners. Afterwards, floor 3, floor 4, floor 5, floor 10, floor 15, floor 20, at the conferred God stage, people were discussing with or flattering each other, and the atmosphere of the place was quite harmonious. It was difficult to take a huge lead over others until after the first several dozens of floors. But as more and more time passed, after passing through floor 50, the gap in the performances of the participants became wider and wider. The speed at which the profound practitioners were clearing the floors became slower and slower too, and the atmosphere at the conferred God stage also gradually became tense. Finally, someone reached floor 100, ahead of the second-best performer by as much as 17 floors. This person was still none other than Luo Changsheng. Floor 100 would seem to be very high, but everyone was clear that the competition was still in the beginning stage. Xianxia was also the first in the competition inside the Eternal Heaven Tower, of course, counting from bottom to top. He was still standing in place and hadn't moved at all this whole time. It was as if he had completely lost his consciousness since the time he had appeared inside the Eternal Heaven Tower. His body was still, and there was not the slightest change in his expression. However, the fluctuation of emotions was constantly happening in his heart, as he silently thought about a lot of things. His current understanding of the God realm was too different from the past. Especially, his impression of the eternal heaven realm had undergone a great change. In the past, his understanding of the eternal heaven God realm was all based on the words of others. The impression he had had of the eternal heaven God realm was that it was the most righteous and most prestigious king realm, which received the deep respect of others. The adjudicators of the eternal heaven realm were specialists in adjudicating the evil people of the world, and were absolutely fair and strict. Therefore, when he was questioned by the people of the eternal heaven realm, he stepped forward without any worries. Although the main reason behind his confidence was the presence of the dragon monarch, it was also because of his favorable impression of the eternal heaven realm and his trust in it. But he very soon discovered that he had indeed been too naive. The words and reason, when spoken by him, were considered violating the dignity of the eternal heaven pearl. Not only were they ignored, they also further increased the weight of his crime. However, when the same words were spoken by God Emperor Shishan, they left the eternal heaven realm speechless. It was like the first thing that Bingyun had taught him back then. There is no absolute fairness in this world. It is only absolute strength that exists in reality. Only when you had absolute strength would you be treated with absolute fairness. Otherwise, you could only rely on others' considerations and the rules of fairness formulated by them. Honorable Kui was believed to be the strictest and most impartial person in the Eastern Divine region. He had dedicated his life to adjudicate evil beings and hadn't even hesitated to abandon his name and change it to Kui. But a person such as this had directly insulted Bingyun without much consideration. Perhaps he was indeed incomparably fair and strict, but what Xianxia saw even clearer was his haughty attitude of making light of other star realms, other realm kings, and other profound practitioners. As he was the leader of the adjudicators, he could insult even a realm king who had attained the highest achievement, divine master, as if it was a matter of course. This was the true reality, the true nature of the god realm. There was also Jasmine. The hope of luckily meeting Jasmine no longer existed in his heart. Xianxia couldn't help but realize that Jasmine truly hadn't come to the eternal heaven realm. All of his efforts were for naught. How could he be willing to accept such an outcome? He was truly unwilling to give up still. It wasn't because his hard work over these past years had come to nothing, rather. It had been 3 years already, and the time to return that he had promised Kei and others was drawing closer, and he hadn't met Jasmine yet. It's still not the end. Xianxia faced upward and closed his eyes. He talked to himself in his heart. Jasmine didn't come to the eternal heaven realm, so she didn't see me, but if I can make my name known to all in the eastern divine region, don't I have a very good opportunity to do precisely that right now? A profound practitioner with the strength of the first level of divine tribulation realm entering the conferred god battle of the profound god convention. Ha! My name is bound to cause a sensation, right? When Master finds out about this, she will certainly be very angry. But there is very little time left, and I truly don't have any other way to fulfill my wish. If I don't get to meet Jasmine in the end, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. As Xianxia opened his eyes, the look within them slowly grew cold and resolute. An unusually weird light flashed through the depths of his pupils. Earlier, I brought disgrace to Master. I need to make up for it 10 times over. How dare you insult my master, old man Kui? Open your eyes wide and take a good look to see who is the true blind one. Heaven Tower, the difficulty of the competition increased dramatically. Not only did the profound beasts have greater profound strength than those in the earlier floors, they became even wilder. The profound shadows also began to use all kinds of unexpected moves, and even a slight bit of carelessness could result in taking serious damage. Due to the guidance of these profound shadows, the profound beasts had a far better understanding of the terrain than the profound practitioners, who were visiting the floors of the tower for the first time. Therefore, it was almost impossible to shake them off. Rather, even if someone managed to somehow shake them off and dashed into the next floor, the profound shadows and profound beasts would continue to chase them until they met their death. Finally, a miserable cry came from floor 142. A profound practitioner had died under the sneak attacks of 3 shadows. When they revived, they had been sent back to floor 132. Furthermore, all the profound beasts and profound shadows that they had finished off before had also revived once again. The expressions of many people on the conferred god stage changed at this time. Someone had died before even reaching floor 150, so it was scary to think how tough it was going to be to clear the floors. Once the participants reached floor 200, perhaps, it would not be a competition of who reached floor 300 first, but what few people would be capable of reaching there. After floor 150, the speed at which the participating profound practitioners ascended the eternal heaven tower grew visibly slower and slower. Even those who were ranked among the top 100 were taking every step cautiously, and their movement speeds had greatly lessened. As for those who were ranked relatively closer to the bottom of the top 1,000 list, they were continuously going through hard fights, with dangers lurking on all sides of them. There were some of them who were even taking a breather for a while before entering the next floor. However, there were a few proper and expected exceptions, too. Luo Changsheng was already near floor 200, but his condition was as good as before. Confronting the group of profound beats and profound shadows, only a white light could be seen brushing past them. It was not possible to see what he had done, but the profound beasts and profound shadows fell to the ground in succession and didn't make any sound again. He landed down by the entrance to the next floor, just as the last of the profound beasts fell to the ground. He was acting so naturally and calmly as if he was strolling in a quiet and peaceful courtyard. The scenes of him finishing off the countless opponents in his way were quite a delight to the people watching the competition. Young Master Changsheng is barely 30 years old, and it has hardly been a few years since he stepped into the divine spirit realm. Despite that, his control over profound energy has reached such great heights. This king was also absolutely incomparable to him back then. This sigh actually came from the realm king of an upper star realm. Luo Changsheng had a frail appearance, his aura was light and harmonious as water, and there was no sharpness in his gaze, which didn't sound like a good thing. He was an existence that would be very easily ignored if he were to stand among a group of people and no one knew of his name. But every time he displayed his strength, it made others uncontrollably sigh in amazement. He made the people of this world realize the reason for him being called Young Master Xianxia, which commanded the greatest reputation among the younger generation in the Eastern Divine region. Junzile is still so young. Not only has her cultivation of the profound way reached extraordinary heights, she has also attained perfection in the mastery of sword. This old man spent his entire life crazily learning the sword and bragged to have achieved great completion in sword mastery. Now I actually feel ashamed in front of this junior. Haha, she isn't just some ordinary junior. She is the sole successor of the Sword Sovereign, the one that will become the Sword Sovereign in the future. The daughter of Glazed Light Realm King has been keeping pace with Junzile this whole time. These two have their own strengths, so it's difficult to decide who is better based on their cultivations. If they bump into each other during the conferred god battle, it is certainly going to be a fierce fight between the two of them. On the other hand, Lu Lengchuan from the Shrouding Sky Realm may be one of the 4 god children of the Eastern region, but his inferiority is becoming more and more apparent compared to the other 3 god children. Moreover, he is older than the other 3 by over 20 years. It seems that in this generation, the Shrouding Sky Realm is going to be inferior to the Holy Eve's Realm and the Glazed Light Realm. Although the younger daughter of the Glazed Light Realm King is ranked very close to the bottom of the list, she has already showed a stunning performance by making it this far with her meager cultivation of the first level of Divine Spirit Realm. No, you haven't noticed something. It is true that the rank of this little girl has remained at the very bottom this whole time, and the speed at which she is ascending the tower is very slow. But she hasn't died even once. No less than 200 people ahead of her have died at least once. That is the most wondrous thing we have seen so far in this round. The battles inside the Eternal Heaven Tower continued and became tougher and tougher with the passage of time. Once they passed through floor 200, even the 4 god children of the Eastern region, who have maintained a great lead over the rest all this while, clearly slowed down. The difference in the battle strengths of the 1,000 heaven-chosen children has already been made clear. All sorts of discussions over the current competition were going on at the conferred god stage. Following a sky-shocking cheer from the people of the Holy Eve's realm, Luo Changsheng succeeded in becoming the first to step onto floor 250. There were still the last 50 floors left before he reached his destination. Clearing floor 250, Luo Changsheng had a grave and stern look on his face. He kept his profound strength in an unleashed state all the time, as he forged ahead slowly and carefully. He was no longer strolling as naturally and calmly as earlier, and there were 2 clearly visible light scars on his left arm. There were only 50 floors left, but it could be undoubtedly said that they were going to be a lot more terrifying than the previous 250 floors. It was only now that the true challenge and hardship for the 4 god children of the Eastern region had officially begun. The difficulty of ascending the Eternal Heaven Tower has completely surpassed our imaginations, the Realm King of an Upper Star Realm said. The Eternal Heaven Pearl has set the difficulty of each of the 1,000 isolated worlds according to the strength of the profound practitioners entering them. It is very obvious that the Eternal Heaven Pearl doesn't intend to let everyone reach the top. The so-called reaching the top within the shortest time is more of a camouflage. I guess only 30-odd people out of these 1,000 will have the strength to reach the top. Time has basically nothing to do with achieving that goal. The people around him also nodded in approval. When Luo Changsheng had stepped inside floor 250 amidst the amazement of countless people, Yun Qi, who hadn't budged an inch all along, and was ignored and quickly forgotten by everyone, suddenly showed some movement at this time, as he ran to the entrance to floor 1 at an unhurried pace. His movement immediately drew the attention of many people. Following, a sneer appeared on their faces as expected. What does he want to do? He isn't planning to ascend the tower, right? Ha, he definitely is still not aware that the opponent he will be facing on floor 1 has the strength of the Divine Spirit Realm, which is why he dared to go in there in the first place. He won't be able to survive for even a breath of time. After lying down there sleeping for such a long time, he now wants to go die at all costs. He is making such a spectacle of himself. More and more people ridiculed and laughed at him, and in the blink of an eye, the gazes of a large number of audience members were focused on Yun Qi. It was because looking down on the weak undoubtedly made them feel a kind of superiority. Even those from the lower star realms, who were of the bottommost level among the experts present at the conferred god stage, could taste an incomparably comfortable and joyous feeling from mocking and looking down on Xianxia. As Xianxia proceeded ahead, his speed became faster and faster. His figure also rapidly grew fainter by the second as he moved forward, and the instant he stepped into floor 1, he had completely disappeared without a trace. Everyone's mocking laughs came to an abrupt stop in this instant. Instead, the people in the audience widened their pupils all of a sudden, as a stupefied look appeared all over their faces. Disappeared. What is going on? What exactly happened? Could it be that he took the initiative to give up the qualification and has been sent outside now? No, that's not it. Quickly take a look. Changes have been happening constantly inside the projection. Xianxia's figure had completely disappeared, but the projection was constantly showing different scenes. The image being displayed by the projection flitted across floor 1, arriving at floor 2, and then again, very quickly flitting across floor 3 and arriving at floor 4 during this entire time. It was only the terrain that was showing, and there were no signs of Xianxia's figure. What is going on? An unusual look surfaced in the eyes of the eternal heaven god emperor. Soon after, as if he had suddenly thought of something, an inconceivable expression immediately appeared on his face. Even God Emperor Xishan, who had been completely uninterested in the battles inside the Eternal Heaven Tower, sat up at this moment. His eyes emitted strange light, as he stared directly at the projection that wasn't displaying any person on it. Could it be perfect invisibility? The Dragon Monarch said slowly. It was the first time his face, gaze, and voice had become so solemn after arriving at the Eternal Heaven Realm. All of the 5 great god emperors looked sideways. Dragon Monarch, could it truly be? Such an invisibility technique has been mentioned in many records, and it is absolutely not something fabricated, the Dragon Monarch said in a slow voice. You yourselves should be clear on this point. This is the highest level possible for a profound movement skill, the final realm. Even if one obtained a profound skill of such a level, it would be tremendously difficult to practice it successfully. Not only does it require extremely high comprehension ability, rumor has it that it is also essential to have extreme affinity with one or many natural elements, have great control over one's profound strength, and have a special understanding of the aura of heaven and earth. Furthermore, it still needs an unimaginably huge opportunity of realization. It can be said that the conditions for learning such a technique successfully are extremely harsh. Although I have seen so many records, in this dragon's 350,000-year-long life, today is the first time I've truly seen it with my own eyes. You all know we all underestimated this youngster. The Dragon Monarch's countenance visibly changed while saying these words. The 5 great god emperors all fell silent and didn't utter a word for a long time. Possibly, they had never thought that there would come a day when their understanding of things would be shattered by such a youngster. Brahma Heaven God Emperor, this dragon remembers that great splendorous Brahma shadow of you Brahma Heaven God Emperors. Its ultimate realm is invisible and traceless, I think, the Dragon Monarch asked all of a sudden. The Brahma Heaven God Emperor slightly nodded his head. Correct. However, such a realm was only successfully cultivated by our ancestor 900,000 years ago. Since then, no one has been able to do so. Brahma Heaven has tried it before, but it was all to no avail even after countless attempts. If this dragon hasn't guessed wrong, this child is executing the divine profound skill of the divine Ice Phoenix sect in the Snow Song realm, Moon-Splitting Cascade. The Dragon Monarch faintly exhaled. It's no wonder that he was able to become the direct disciple of the Snow Song realm king. This is not as simple as invisibility, you know. God Emperor Xishan had his chin held between his thumb and finger, as his eyes were still staring directly at the projection on which Xianxia was present. Not only has his body completely disappeared, his aura has disappeared too. He has rushed past so many floors, but none of the profound beasts or profound shadows showed the slightest reaction to his appearance. Wonderful. I didn't think that such a movement skill still existed in this world. So wonderful. The Brahma Heaven God Emperor didn't say anything for a long while. A strange light flashed in his eyes. So there is still someone besides Yinger in this world who can accomplish such a thing. There is no one in the entire God realm who can come anywhere close to the talent and comprehension ability of Yinger. She had a realization right after breaking through to the Divine Master realm and finally attained the realm of invisibility. But this person is just at the Divine Tribulation realm, considering even the dragon monarch and the 5 great god emperors were shocked in their hearts. It was easy to imagine the reaction of the others. The entire conferred god stage had become noisy, and even the realm kings who had come to watch the competition of the profound god convention didn't dare to believe their own eyes. What exactly is going on here? Could it be some demonic art or some sort of special profound item? Profound movement skill? Impossible. How could this world have such a movement skill? Will this be considered cheating? Shit, what the hell is going on? Yan Juhai was dumbstruck, and Huo Ruli had his eyeballs on the verge of popping out. Afterwards, he suddenly quivered as he came to himself and shouted, "Hey, Elder Huanji, what trick is this? This boy Yun Qi, how is he able to pull off such a thing?" On the other hand, both Mu Bingyun and Mu Huanji stood up in extreme excitement. "Don't tell me!" Mu Huanji widened his eyes as he thought of something but was unable to believe it. Moon-splitting cascade. It's the ultimate realm that even the sect master and our previous ancestors were never able to practice successfully, Mu Bingyun murmured. As a palace master of the divine Ice Phoenix sect and an inheritor of the Phoenix bloodline, being able to see the ultimate realm of movement derived from the power of Ice Phoenix deeply shook her mind. She was so excited that she wouldn't regret even dying now. There was no doubt that invisibility was one of Yun Qi's greatest trump cards, and an extremely important life-saving means to him as well. The only one who truly knew about him being able to use invisibility, besides himself, had been Mu Xunian. It was the case until today before Shui Meiyan, a completely indescribable person, unexpectedly came to know about it too. As for others, even someone like Mu Bingyun had not been aware of it. In the Darkia realm, he assassinated so many members of the Black Soul divine sect, and played tricks on them for so long, but no one knew that he could become invisible, because it was impossible for them to think, even if they were beaten to death, that someone could actually make both their figure and aura disappear completely. With such a trump card in his hand, it was difficult for him to die, even if he truly wanted that many a times. After remaining silent for long, pondering and considering things for a long time, he showed this trump card publicly in front of countless people, just so that he could fulfill his wish of meeting Jasmine. This was the only method he could think of, and since his ability to become invisible had already been discovered by Shui Meiyan, she could tell others about it whenever she wanted, so it was no longer a secret. In the midst of the disordered cries, shouts, and voices of discussions, the disappeared figure of Yun Qi quickly headed forward. When he had first comprehended the realm of invisibility, he needed to be careful even when walking in his invisible state. A slight carelessness was enough to let others know of his presence. But the current Yun Qi had tempered himself in the Darkia realm and had put so much effort into cultivation for 2 years. Now he could execute the realm of invisibility with ease due to all the experience he had gained so far. He didn't need to be careful while invisible at all, and his movement speed was also getting faster and faster. Floor 10, floor 20, floor 30, floor 50, floor 100, floor 120, floor 150, floor 200. On the conferred god stage, the noise gradually quieted. The gazes of the audience, which were previously focused on the 4 god children of the Eastern region and other profound practitioners, were staring at the projection that was displaying the world Yun Qi was presently in at this time. They watched the screen of the projection rapidly displaying one scene after another in a dumbstruck manner. Floor 220, floor 230, floor 240, floor 250. Then, the screen showed the floor beyond the one where Luo Changsheng was located at the moment, and the image that was being displayed on the projection continued to show higher and higher floors. He didn't stop for rest or get involved in any fighting. As if all the profound beasts and profound shadows were deprived of their consciousness, not one of them showed the least bit of reaction to him. Other profound practitioners had to be careful on every floor, especially since there was a likelihood of them getting into a fatal and fierce fight once they cleared floor 200. But for Yun Qi, the only thing he had to do in this round was to simply ascend the tower. Floor 270, floor 280, floor 290, floor 299. There were 30 profound beasts and 30 profound shadows jointly guarding this floor. Yun Qi slowed down and walked in the midst of them at an unhurried pace. He was as close as less than 20 steps away from a huge profound beast. However, that profound beast still remained crouched on the ground, continuing to look around in all directions as before. Although it was clearly on its guard, it didn't show any reaction to Yun Qi, who was so close to him. In this way, As if he had entered a place devoid of anyone, Xianxia directly walked to the entrance of floor 300, despite the fact that floor 299 was the most dangerous and fearsome one in the whole tower. When he stepped inside floor 300, he undid his invisibility and revealed his true body to the countless blankly staring eyes. There were no profound beasts guarding floor 300, with only a teleportation profound formation at the center of the floor. Xianxia had an indifferent expression, which showed no signs of sorrow or joy. He didn't wait for any instructions and walked into the profound formation. Clank. Rays of light flashed as Xianxia's projection inside the eternal heaven tower disintegrated completely and dissipated without any trace. At the center of the conferred god stage, Xianxia slowly walked out of the dense white light that had enveloped the real bodies of all the heaven-chosen children. It was deathly silence that welcomed his return to the stage. According to the rules, I am first, correct? Xianxia fully ignored the reaction of all the people as he stopped in his tracks. He faced Honorable Kui, who was standing in front of him, and asked with no expression on his face. Honorable Kui observed Xianxia. This leader of adjudicators, who had punished countless star realms and experts of divine way, and wouldn't change his expression even if the sky were to fall, was not able to say anything for a good long time. Xianxia's tone of voice was light and casual, but it was clear enough for everyone to hear his words. But as if they were under some sort of spell, the people at the conferred god stage were absolutely silent, with only the sharp and clear sounds of jaws hitting the floor resounding continuously. Good, good, good. God Emperor Xishan clapped hard while repeatedly roaring the word good thrice. There was an unusual light in his eyes. Well done, boy. That divine skill of invisibility you displayed truly broadened the horizons of this king. Being able to witness such a divine skill alone is worth this king making the trip to the divine eastern region. It's a pity that you're from the divine eastern region. If you were born in the southern divine region, this king would have even vied with others for taking you in as a disciple. Ha 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 ha. God Emperor Xishan laughed loudly. Each and every word of his sounded like a sudden thunderclap. Words like broadened this king's horizons, and vied with others for taking you in as a disciple, carried unimaginable weight when spoken by the God Emperor who was ranked second in the southern divine region. Earlier, Honorable Kui had said harsh and insulting words about Xianxia's master. God Emperor Xishan saying such words at this time was much more than a smack in the face to Honorable Kui. All the people present in this place had clearly seen Xianxia's performance. Not only the realm kings of the thousands of star realms, but also the distinguished individuals watching the competition from the eastern seating area. The 5 great god emperors, star gods, moon gods, and the adjudicators had a look of surprise on their faces. Divine skill of invisibility. Isn't it the legendary movement skill of the divine way? Is it truly possible for someone to have practiced it? Especially, is such a thing possible for a youngster who is only at the divine tribulation realm? There are indeed records of such a skill, but we have never heard of anyone successfully practicing it before. Could he be using some kind of eye-deceiving art? God Emperor Xishan said it himself. How can it be fake? Does that mean this boy has far more ability than what it seems? Is him passing the round this way not considered cheating? Don't tell me that he is now considered the first ranker in this round. That's not going to happen, right? Xianxia passed the first 2 rounds of preliminaries, despite having the strength of the first level of divine tribulation realm. As he stood on the conferred god stage, although it surprised everyone, soon after, they found it laughable instead. Xianxia employed crooked means this time again, which completely deviated from the original intention of arranging such an assessment. Moreover, all of them saw his entire journey from start to end with their own eyes. But they didn't find him contemptible and laughable due to him finishing the round in such a way, and instead were so shocked that they could not calm their emotions for a long while. What, do you want to say that I cheated once again? Looking at the stiff expression of Honorable Kui Hui, Xianxia let out a low laugh. Then he said in a voice that was only audible to him, "There was no rule other than to reach floor 300 first, and you announced it yourself. Could it be that Honorable Kui, the one called as the most fair and strict person in the Eastern Divine region, feels no hesitation in smacking his own face?" Immediately, the face of Honorable Kui contorted and his gaze turned slightly gloomy, but he still didn't say anything. As the leader of the adjudicators, how was it possible for him to be unaware of invisibility, the ultimate level of movement skills? Despite having lived for tens of thousands of years, it was only today that he had witnessed it for the first time. However, the one who had displayed such great skill actually turned out to be the junior he felt incomparable contempt for, the one that he loathed a lot. He certainly said it himself, especially to mock Xianxia. He put emphasis on words like, "There are no restrictions on the means. There are no rules," because he was sure that as everyone was separated from each other, and there was danger everywhere with no place to flee in the eternal heaven tower, it would be an idiotic dream to want to cheat in the third round. He never expected that there was still the possibility of using such a method. This method was something that even the 5 great god emperors couldn't use, let alone him. Honorable Kui turned around to look at the eternal heaven god emperor. After the two looked at each other, the latter gave him a slight nod. Kui turned back to face Xianxia. His chest faintly moved up and down as he said in a solemn voice, "Xianxia of the Snow Song Realm, you have passed the 3rd round of preliminaries and have the qualification to enter the final conferred god battle. You will have to stay here for now and can only leave once the preliminaries come to an end." WAAH. The conferred god stage at once became boisterous. Witnessing invisibility definitely deeply shocked the audience. But the profound way cultivation of Xianxia was only at the 1st level of divine tribulation realm, after all. He only relied on invisibility, and not his strength to be the first to pass the competition inside the eternal heaven tower. And it was true strength which was required to enter the final, conferred god battle. It was already a huge joke for a heaven-chosen child to be at the 1st level of divine tribulation realm, and had angered even someone with self-restraint as great as the eternal heaven god emperor. Now, if he also entered the conferred god battle, it would undoubtedly cause a tremendous disturbance and uproar in the eastern divine region, and it would be laughed at by other divine regions without any reservations. However, it was the decision of the eternal heaven realm, a decision they could not help but make. Xianxia turned a deaf ear to the reaction of the people in his surroundings. He calmly stood in place, as wave after wave of emotions surged within his heart. The conferred god battle had been the final and most important event of the previous sessions of the Profound God Convention. He had heard that every fight of the conferred god battle was even displayed everywhere in the eastern divine region via star tablets. "Looks like I'm really going to be well known, huh?" he said inwardly in self-ridicule. "Jasmine, once you see me and hear my name, you'll definitely come to look for me. You definitely will. I didn't think that to be able to meet you I would have to come across such ups and downs and hardships. But at this moment, it is only excitement that I can feel. I don't feel the least bit of regret about what all I had to face to come so far. Even if I have to pay 10 times the price for my actions to this point, or face 10 times the consequences I have suffered, I will still not regret anything. Sometimes I myself felt bewildered too. Why was I able to so resolutely abandon everything I had on the blue pole star, only to arrive at the completely unfamiliar God realm, regardless of whatever might happen? Moreover, it was only for the sake of seeing you once, or even the possibility of being able to see you once. But right now, the crazily surging emotions within my heart have answered my doubt. That is because you are Jasmine. You are the one who gave me a new life and changed my fate as well. You are the one for whom I can willingly give away everything I have, even if means being damned for eternity." Time quickly passed by. The competition inside the Eternal Heaven Tower was still going on, and becoming more and more intense. The gazes of the audience finally shifted back to the Eternal Heaven Tower. It was only Xianxia who was standing quietly with closed eyes. He didn't give another glance to the Eternal Heaven Tower. He clearly had a good opportunity to observe the powerful participants who were going to be his opponents in the conferred god battle. But he didn't have any interest in doing so. It was because he had already achieved his goal, and the conferred god battle had nothing to do with him any longer. Furthermore, given his strength, he would suffer certain defeat at the hands of any expert strong enough to enter the conferred god battle. The thing he was planning to do next was to wait for Jasmine to come looking for him. After today, so long as Jasmine was present in the eastern divine region, there should be no reason for her to not hear his name. An unknown period of time passed when extremely excited voices began to resound beside his ear. "Luo Changsheng? It's Luo Changsheng. He is just about to reach the top." Very soon, a white light flashed behind Xianxia, and an elegant figure slowly walked out of it. The cheers from the people of the Holy Eve's realm shook the sky. If not for the presence of an abnormal existence like Xianxia, their cheers would certainly have been even more elated. Luo Changsheng came a few steps ahead when he suddenly caught sight of Xianxia, causing a faint, startled look to surface in his eyes. But the change in his eyes only appeared for an instant, after which he shifted his gaze away from the other party and didn't spare him another glance. It was very obvious that in his opinion, or to be exact, in the opinion of anyone with a normally working brain, the sole possibility for Xianxia to appear here before him was because of him voluntarily abandoning the competition. Besides, it was only normal for someone like him to directly give up on the competition. Well done. Honorable Kui slightly nodded towards Luo Changsheng as an extremely rare look of appreciation emerged on his face. Xianxia also didn't look at Luo Changsheng either. These two people who had returned to the conferred God stage before the rest had no point of intersection between them, as if they were living in two separate worlds. Perhaps, in their hearts, they considered themselves to be an existence of a completely different world from each other's. Following Luo Changsheng, the second, the third, the fourth winner appeared, more and more people reached floor 300 and returned to the conferred God stage. This first batch of people to clear the competition inside the Eternal Heaven Tower was, undoubtedly, the group of most top-notch existences in the entire Eastern Divine region. Each one of them already had a great reputation in the Eastern Divine region. Their reactions upon seeing Xianxia were basically the same as Luo Changsheng's. Jun Zile, in particular, had a deep look of contempt and disgust on her face when her gaze turned to him. The feelings of humiliation and hatred, which were buried in the depths of her heart, would also be roused every time she saw Xianxia. At some point in time, there were already over 20 youngsters who had returned to the conferred God stage, and the remaining slots for the conferred God battle were also becoming fewer and fewer. It was at this time that Xianxia suddenly heard a name he was quite concerned about. That boy is truly from the Flame God realm. How can someone from a Middle Star realm be so powerful? Xianxia raised his head as his gaze very quickly locked onto a projection. The entire screen of the projection was filled with the faint golden light of flames. He could clearly hear the loud roar of Huo Poyun, as well as the painful and despairing growls of a large number of profound beasts that were located in the midst of golden crow flames. Golden flames soared into the sky as if they would burn through the eternal heaven tower. Gradually, the growls of the profound beasts quieted, and Huo Poyun walked out of the light of flames that had filled the sky. His whole body dyed in blood. He was walking at a slow pace, but each of his steps were firm as iron. Within his blazing pupils, there was no sign of pain, and only his incomparably scorching hot and unswerving determination could be seen in them. Leaving a long line of blood behind him, he stepped inside floor 300 of the Eternal Heaven Tower, consequently becoming the 25th person to enter the conferred God battle. He is truly amazing, Xianxia sighed in sincere admiration. He ranked within the top 200 in the very first round, and then he placed among the top 100. Right now, he was the 25th person to pass the competition inside the Eternal Heaven Tower out of the 1,000 heaven-chosen children, and successfully entered the conferred God battle. Not only that, he was also the first young profound practitioner from a Middle Star realm to enter the conferred God battle. He continuously shocked Xianxia with his performance and gave tremendous pleasant surprises to the Flame God realm time and time again. Conferred God battle, it's the conferred God battle, you know, Huo Ruli said repeatedly, as if he was lost in a dream and didn't want to wake up. Who would have thought that Poyun could come so far? We completely underestimated his attainment in the flame element. After all, he has, speaking the first half of his words, a deep look of excitement and expectation surfaced on Yan Juhai's face. The gaze of the Eternal Heaven God Emperor paused on Huo Poyun for a long time. Afterwards, he turned to the people from the Flame God realm, as he said with a faint smile, "Congratulations to the two sect masters of the Flame God realm. It seems that the Flame God realm will be promoted to the status of an upper star realm before long." Yan Juhai and Huo Ruli were feeling extremely flattered. They hurriedly greeted him back, as they felt extremely excited in their hearts. As Huo Poyun walked out of the screen of light, there was still uncontrollable excitement on his face. The instant he turned to Huo Ruli to signal his greeting, he caught sight of Xianxia and was taken aback immediately. "Brother Yun, you—" Xianxia walked over to him as he said with a faint smile, "Brother Poyun, now it's simply impossible for you to not be famous in the world." "Ahaha, you—" Huo Poyun would act in an exceptionally fierce and cruel manner when fighting his opponents, but he was quite a gentle person normally. He gave an embarrassed laugh. and was just about to ask Xianxia whether he withdrew from the competition voluntarily. But then he suddenly thought that it would definitely hurt Xianxia's self-esteem and promptly stopped himself from speaking any further. He lowered his voice as he said, changing the topic, "Brother Yun, you almost scared me to death earlier. You actually dared to contradict Honorable Kui Fu. You don't know how powerful an individual he is. Please make sure not to do such a thing again." However, Xianxia said with a calm and collected smile, "Don't you worry, I'm safer than every one of you all. Even if that Honorable Kui loses his mind and wants to launch a direct attack to kill me, I still have a means to render him unable to do so." Eh? Huo Poyun was stunned. Although he trusted Xianxia quite a lot, he found it difficult to believe these words of Xianxia's. "Quick, look over there. When did that little girl from the glazed light realm overtake the others?" The majority of the gazes focused on the same projection. A lovely and exquisite girl was flying within it like a butterfly. There was a large group of profound beasts chasing after her, but surprisingly, the speed of these profound beasts slowed down little by little, until they finally came to a halt. They lifelessly watched the girl getting farther and farther away from them, but didn't show any signs of pursuing her again. "Shui Meiyin? Ah, what's going on?" Huo Poyun revealed surprise and incomprehension on his face. All the profound beasts inside the Eternal Heaven Tower were endlessly chasing the participants like mad dogs. So why did they stop chasing after her? It should be due to soul interference and one that is extremely strong. Xianxia frowned as he said slowly, "This little girl had such a terrifying mental strength. She could actually interfere with the perception of so many profound beasts. Could it be that his invisible state was easily sensed by her, because of her excessively powerful mental strength, too?" Xianxia himself had an extremely strong mental strength, but he had never tried to specifically train his mental strength. Therefore, the power of his mental strength was totally used in issuing simple and brutal mental attacks, and in providing him an extremely strong mental defense. For example, the stun effect of Dragon Soul and the soul-burning effect of Red Butterfly. What Shui Meiyin had displayed was mental interference, something much more difficult and advanced than a simple mental attack. With enough powerful interference, one could even be able to control the target. 2. Shui Meiyin's rank within the group of profound practitioners was originally at the lower rungs. However, alongside her ascension, her ranking became higher and higher. As the guarding profound beasts and profound shadows grew stronger and stronger, causing the other profound practitioners to have a hard time, Shui Meiyin's speed of progression was not much slower than her earlier pace, and she gradually made a comeback. In the end, she was the 27th person to exit the Eternal Heaven Tower. Every one of the God Emperors was moved, and the entire conferred God stage broke into clamor. Shui Meiyin had entered the conferred God battle at the age of 15, making history. If not for the cancerous tumor named Xianxia, she would have also broken the record for being the person with the lowest profound strength to have reached the conferred God battle. Shui Meiyin walked out from the screen of light without the uncertain looks that the others had when they came out of a hard-fought battle. Wearing a light smile, she gracefully landed at her older sister's side like a butterfly. Upon seeing Xianxia, she was not the least surprised and shot him a sweet smile. Xianxia. As time passed, more and more of the spots for the conferred God battle were being filled. The profound practitioners in the Eternal Heaven Tower seemed to have sensed something as their progression became all the more fierce. "Ha!" Amidst a loud roar, the 31st person came out of the screen of light. It was astonishingly Luo Changsheng's older brother, Luo Chang'an. Luo Chang'an's cultivation was only at the 6th level of the Divine Spirit realm. Entering the conferred God battle at that level should have been impossible, but he was, after all, born from the Holy Eve's realm, which possessed an extremely strong foundation. That, in addition to his powerful special profound arts, allowed him to pass experts at the 7th and even 8th level of the Divine Spirit realm to enter the conferred God battle. It was at this time that the voice of Eternal Heaven rang out in the Eternal Heaven Tower, stating that there was only one more spot for the conferred God battle. The voice of Eternal Heaven had no doubt just ruthlessly jabbed at the mental states of every profound practitioner, causing their progressions to become several times more intense. They no longer took care and were now fighting at every step. The death count of many multiplied, but there were also those who were strong that trod a blood-soaked journey upwards with their lives on the line. In the end, yet more people had ascended to floor 299. 6 had practically ascended at the same time. Floor 299 was unquestionably the most dangerous and challenging floor. There were too many profound beasts and profound shadows standing guard, and the best, or perhaps the only, method to clear it was to defeat them one by one. The moment someone drew the attention of all the profound beasts and profound shadows, it could be said that unless they had the strength of one of the Eastern Divine Region's god children, they were destined for certain death under the group assault. The 6 profound practitioners on floor 299 were incredibly anxious, but they had no choice but to be cautious. After a long while, 2 of the 6 died a violent death, and the pace of other 4 did not even reach half of their original, as they met all sorts of dangers. It was at this time that a new figure approached. Yet another person had reached the entrance of floor 299. He was soaked in blood from head to toe. Even his face was plastered with blood paste, making it impossible to clearly discern his appearance. It was obvious that he had just undergone an incomparably bitter battle. After reaching floor 299, he didn't bother to take a single breather as he directly pounced forward, charging ahead like a madman. This action wrinkled the brows of many in the audience. This guy's courting death. Even if you say that they have to put their lives on the line, isn't this just dying in vain? Ah, youth, so easy to lose their heads and become impulsive. His action undoubtedly alerted all the profound beasts and profound shadows in the area. The beasts immediately sprang on him amidst their roars, and the profound shadows swiftly swept over. Several tens of frightening auras simultaneously locked onto him. This was no different than spelling his doom to anyone watching. Ooh, you-ah-ah. This scream was especially shrill and completely suppressed the roars of the profound beasts, giving the spectators on the conferred god stage a shock. Even Xianxia had turned in the direction of the shout's origin. A person whose hair, face, and entire body was completely soaked in blood pounced forward into the profound beast herd. After that, a streak of bloody light exploded outward, causing the entire image to be plastered in scarlet blood. The following scene filled the audience with shock. The blood-colored figure's profound energy wildly surged, without leaving a sliver of it for defense. The oddly shaped, 7-inch-long short blade in his hand accurately severed the lifelines of one profound beast after another as his own body also received consecutive heavy blows, causing him to resemble a boulder being nailed to death. However, he was not willing to fall. The right side of his chest and his right leg were simultaneously pierced through by 2 icicles. His left arm was being ruthlessly locked in place by 2 tyrannical waves of power. Instead of freeing himself from it, he welcomed the profound beast before him with a thrust of his blade. Amidst a palpitating sound that resembled the tearing of silk, his left arm was torn down and off, causing a spray of bloody rain. At the same instant, the light of a blood-soaked blade ruthlessly ran through 3 profound beasts. He didn't scream, nor did he bother to look at the shoulder which was missing an arm and spurting out blood. Like a madman that had crawled out of a blood pool from hell, he charged toward the remaining profound beasts and profound shadows. On the conferred god stage, even those exceptional experts who had gone through many trials in life were moved. This boy, who is he? Why do I not have any impression of him? I don't know HSSS to actually display such ruthlessness at such a young age, how frightening. I am certain that he was not born from an upper star realm. Under the gazes of the audience's shock, the last profound beast by his side fell amidst a sorrowful cry. Thud! He heavily kneeled, then used his utmost effort to crawl on the floor. Though he now lacked a left arm, there was also no place on his body that was intact. The ghastly sight of his blood made many question whether or not all the blood in his body had been bled dry. He crawled toward the entrance of the Eternal Heaven Tower's floor 300. Every movement and rise of his remaining arm especially difficult and immensely painful. Xianxia furrowed his brows, his expression changing, slaughtering through divine spirit profound beasts to the point where he was unable to even stand in the next moment. Xianxia was not able to imagine what kind of battles the guy had gone through. From him, he found a faint shadow of himself. Finally, the crawling man reached the entrance of floor 300, and then yet again crawled onto the profound formation with a horrifyingly long trail of blood behind him. Clank, a human figure walked out of the conferred god stage's screen of light. Upon his exit, he drew the gazes of everyone present. It was a medium-built man. Since he was able to enter the profound god convention, he was naturally not too old, yet his face looked as though he had gone through many of life's challenges. What was most striking was his white hair, different from a typical whiteness. It looked like the white a dying elder would possess. Profound strength aura, 6th level of the divine spirit realm. Surpassing experts with greater cultivation than himself, he had seized the last remaining qualification which would allow him to participate in the conferred god battle. He ought to have been mad with joy, but his face was still incomparably stiff and indifferent. Let alone joy, not even a bit of emotion could be felt from his person. After walking out of the screen of light, he said not a word, nor did he bother to look at anyone else. His cold and indifferent eyes resembled an emotionless lone wolf. This person is really scary. He's simply the same as a madman. He ought to have gone through some hardships, Brother Yun. After Huo Poyun said that, he discovered that Yun Qi seemed to have been in a daze and didn't react to him at all. This person, Yun Qi's mind suddenly rippled. This white-haired man's expression deeply stirred Yun Qi's heart. It was because he saw his former self, when he was back in the Azure Cloud continent, when he had lost his master and then lost Linger. He had no attachment to anything in this world, only boundless hatred. This person had definitely undergone true hell, but why would he come here to participate in the profound god convention, and so desperately want to enter the conferred god battle? Wait, this aura is... Yun Qi's expression suddenly changed as he sunk into silence. Could it be that it was just my misconception? When the white-haired man walked out of the screen of light, the other projections on the conferred god stage had all scattered at the same time. The profound light that enveloped the heaven-chosen children slowly dispersed. The heaven-chosen children that had not passed through to participate in the conferred god battle all regained consciousness, saddened. Very good. In front of the group of heaven-chosen children, Honorable Kui slowly nodded. The 32 people with the qualifications to enter the conferred god battle has already been determined. To those who did not make it, you have also proven your strengths, so do not be discouraged. After leaving the conferred god stage, you may enter the spectating area and sit in the seats of your respective star realms to watch the battles. Honorable Kui swept his gaze over, then said gently, "Since the results have come out, the conferred god battle will officially begin tomorrow. I will now proceed to announce the names of those who have passed the Eternal Heaven Tower trial and have gained the qualifications to participate in the conferred god battle. You may all use this to carefully get familiar with who your upcoming opponents are." With a wave of Honorable Kui's hand, a special screen of light appeared behind him. Beneath the screen of light was a light blue profound formation that released a soft light. This is the Eternal Heaven Pearl's Adjudication Profound Formation. This is where the schedule for the conferred god stage is set up, and it also decides the final verdict. When this honored one calls your name, please stand on top of this profound formation. Young experts who have obtained the qualifications to enter the conferred god battle, this is the special privilege bestowed to you all. Special privilege? Anticipation lit up the eyes of those who had passed the Eternal Heaven Tower trial once those words were said. Honorable Kui's gaze swept over yet again as he began to read the names aloud. 32nd place, Wei Hen, using 138 hours. When his voice fell, the white-haired man who had reached floor 300 last slowly walked forward. His footsteps were particularly heavy and each step seemed to pulsate. His cold face and expression appeared as though they would never melt. When he stood atop the adjudication profound formation, his name instantly appeared in the screen of light behind him. Wei Hen origin, not imprinted. Lifespan, 52 cultivation, 6th level of the divine spirit realm. Wei Hen Yun Qi stored this name in his mind. This person did not imprint his place of birth, and it was also obvious that even his name was fake. He was a complete enigma. Wait, this feeling, Yun Qi's pupils slightly contracted. No, it wasn't my misconception earlier, this person, his profound energy. Honorable Kui glanced at Wei Hen. The adjudication profound formation didn't make any abnormal reactions, so he didn't question any further. He continued, 31st place, Lu Chang'an, using 138 hours. Wei Hen and Lu Chang'an were the only people there that were at the 6th level of the divine spirit realm. The two of them bypassed those with cultivation at the 7th and 8th level of the divine spirit realm to enter the conferred god battle. 30th place, 29th place, 27th place Shui Meiyan, a 25th place Huo Poyun, 16th place Wu Gaik, a 5th place Lu Lengchuan using 82 hours. As Honorable Kui announced the rankings, the heaven-chosen children faintly felt that something wasn't right. When he announced Lu Lengchuan's ranking, That was when everyone finally realized where the wrongness took place. This name doesn't seem right. This was especially true for the ones who placed in front. Even Luo Changsheng's brows faintly twitched before he glanced at Yun Qi with a pensive gaze. Fourth place, Xu Yingyu, using 78 hours. Third place, Jun Zile, using 78 hours. Second place, Luo Changsheng, using 72 hours. The spectators knew what had happened, but how could these heaven-chosen children know what came about? Even if they were given 10,000 brains, they would never think that anyone would treat the hellish 300 floors as if nothing was in sight. Once they heard that Lu Lengchuan was unexpectedly in 5th place, then Xu Yingyu and Jun Zile were in 4th and 3rd. They were already staring at one another, speechless. Once they heard that Lu Changsheng was actually in 2nd place, they were completely dumbstruck. What was going on? Who had surpassed Lu Changsheng's ranking? The names of all of the Eastern Divine Region's famed god children had obviously been read aloud already too. First place, Honorable Kui's voice slightly paused as though he didn't want to say this name. Yun Qi using 54 hours. Bang! In that instant, at least 900 chins smashed onto the floor. As everyone stared blankly at him, Yun Qi walked into the profound formation in a carefree manner. Yun Qi, origin. Snow Song Realm, lifespan, 27, cultivation, first level of the Divine Tribulation realm. There wasn't the slightest unusualness in the final determination of his qualifications. A shameless villain, and the shame of profound way from the lower realms, with the meager cultivation of the first level of the Divine Tribulation realm, was actually able to surpass the ranking of Luo Changsheng and the rest of the participants. How could they believe such a thing? How could they be convinced of such a result? In fact, Yun Qi didn't even take 2 hours to ascend up to floor 300. He spent more than 40-odd hours before that pondering about his life, absent-mindedly, and he basically hadn't budged an inch the whole time. If this was any other place, all the heaven-chosen children, who possessed both strength as well as haughtiness, would have exploded with fury to be made to accept such an utterly nonsensical result. But right now, they were on the conferred God stage, and this result had been announced by Honorable Kui himself. Although each of them had a big frown on their faces and felt greatly dissatisfied in their hearts, they were rational enough not to question the judgment of the eternal heaven realm, however. That wasn't true for all of them. Luo Chang'an suddenly stepped forward. He bowed in respect before stretching out his hand and pointing straight at Yun Qi. Honorable Kui, this junior Luo Chang'an doesn't understand something. How is it possible for Yun Qi, a base villain with such low cultivation and character, the shame of profound way, to retreat? Honorable Kui shouted sternly all of a sudden. He is the first-place winner. His means may be unusual, but it was not against the rules, so he certainly passed this round. Not only this honored one, but everyone here has seen him finishing the competition with their own eyes. How can you raise a doubt over the results? If you want to know the reason, you're free to go and ask your seniors. Retreat for now. Yes, it was rash of this junior. Luo Chang'an didn't dare to say another word as he retreated resentfully. However, every person's expressions changed slightly upon hearing Honorable Hui say unusual means. Especially those profound practitioners who were ranked very close to Yun Qi. There was not one whose face hadn't turned red from rage, and some of them were even shaking as they stared directly at Yun Qi, but didn't dare to break out in anger. For someone with a profound strength of the first level of the Divine Tribulation realm to get the first place, what other reason was possible besides the use of special means? I would like to first congratulate you all for being able to stand out among the 1,000 heaven-chosen children that were chosen by the eternal heaven pearl itself, and becoming the 32 conferred God candidates, who will be entering the final conferred God battle of the Profound God Convention. Becoming one of the 32 candidates is not only proof of your strength, but also the glory of your lives. However, only 4 of you, 32 conferred God candidates, will be able to be conferred the title of God in the end. The upcoming conferred God battle might turn out to be the fiercest competition you have faced in your life so far, because your opponents will be the most top-notch and the most powerful profound practitioners in the Eastern Divine Region. At the same time, it will be the battlefield where you will have the greatest chance to prove your strength and bring glory to yourselves. The conferred God battle will be held tomorrow. However, you don't need to worry about the lack of preparation time. Each of Honorable Hui's words sounded like a bell. He made a grasping gesture with his hand. Immediately, 32 starlights appeared and flew to every conferred god candidate carrying a profound formation pearl that looked similar. That is Time Wheel Pearl, which has been specifically made by the Eternal Heaven Realm, Honorable Ku said. It contains the energy of the Eternal Heaven Pearl. If you channel your profound strength into it, it can open up a special time wheel barrier. The time wheel barrier can at most exist for a month, but this 1 month will be equal to only 2 hours in the outside world. Other profound practitioners weren't too surprised by the time wheel pearl. It was already general knowledge that the Eternal Heaven Realm could make special spatial profound formations with the energy of the Eternal Heaven Pearl. It was just that such a time wheel pearl was incomparably precious. Although it was only effective for 1 month, no amount of money was enough to obtain it. Xianxia held the time wheel pearl between his finger and thumb as he felt amazed in his heart. Once the time barrier within it was opened up, only 2 hours would pass outside, while 1 whole month would pass inside the barrier. It should be solely the Eternal Heaven Pearl that could produce such a miraculous profound formation under the heavens. Each of their opponents in the conferred god battle was extremely powerful. It was very likely that they would have to give their all in every fight. It would be difficult to avoid getting hurt, and they might even be severely injured, making it difficult for them to recover their profound strength or treat their injuries in a short period of time. Hence, they would have to fight while gravely affected by their physical conditions. But now that they had a time wheel pearl, no matter how tight their competition schedule was, there was not the slightest thing to worry about. After every 2 rounds, the time wheel pearl will be distributed again, though the eliminated ones will not be getting any more of them. Other than that, as a special reward, you will have the greatest authority to move around in the Eternal Heaven Realm before the end of the Profound God Convention. Aside from the restricted areas, you can enter anywhere in the Eternal Heaven Realm. Moreover, you can talk directly with the adjudicators and can also enter and leave the Eternal Heaven Realm unrestrictedly. Xianxia, clank. As Honorable Kui explained, the adjudication profound formation flickered slightly, after which a blue light entered the bodies of the 32 people. At the same time, a small, faint blue nameplate appeared on their shoulders. It was the nameplate to symbolize their identity as one of the 32 conferred god candidates. Now you'll be led to the residences specially arranged for you, or you can go back to the residences allotted to your sects if you want. In other words, the thing you need to do next is to keep yourself at the peak condition at all times. All other things can be accommodated. Do you understand? No one replied to his question, but blazing fighting wills could be seen within the pupils of the 32 profound god candidates, who possessed both strength and haughtiness. The conferred god battle was the competition that displayed the peak strength of the Eastern Divine Region's young generation. It was the stage that was most worthy of them, and most sufficient to prove themselves. Honorable Kui turned around and nodded slightly toward the Eternal Heaven God Emperor. The Eternal Heaven God Emperor slowly stood up. As if they were drawn to him by some formless energy, the gazes of everyone present focused on the Eternal Heaven God Emperor simultaneously. I once again express my thanks to everyone who has come here from afar and discussed the major event together, the Eternal Heaven God Emperor said with a faint smile. His voice reached far, far away and lingered in the air. The conferred God battle is going to be held very soon, so I ask everyone to put the matter of the major event aside and fully enjoy the conferred God battle, which is certainly going to be absolutely wonderful. Because not only are they all amazing youngsters, in 3 years, they might reach the same heights as you all, or even far, far beyond that. Following the speech of the Eternal Heaven God Emperor that was said in a heavy voice, the 3rd round of the preliminaries of the Profound God Convention came to an end. All the experts of the thousands of star realms present at the conferred God stage flew away to their own destinations, either preparing or looking forward to the conferred God battle that was going to start tomorrow. The one that stood out the most in the 3rd round was, unexpectedly, not Luo Changsheng but Xianxia. Even the great realm kings of the thousands of star realms glanced at Xianxia when leaving the conferred God stage, consciously or subconsciously. It was unknown whether it was because they were surprised by his world-shocking and unrivaled invisibility, or if it was due to them unable to accept the fact that a person like him could actually enter the conferred God battle. It was obvious how other profound practitioners who had entered the conferred God stage felt about him. There was no doubt that trash like Xianxia, who was only at the first level of the divine tribulation realm, being present among them, the 32 conferred God candidates, simply felt extraordinary, shameful, and humiliating. The only thing they could do was to look at him with contempt, and then thoroughly ignore and forget about his existence. They would pretend that there were only 31 conferred God candidates. Xianxia came over to everyone from the Snow Song realm. Before he could open his mouth, Mu Huanji said in incomparable excitement, "Xianxia, how should I put it? Anyway, you were really too reckless. Moreover, now you'll be participating in the conferred God battle. THTH this, cheating, becoming a heaven-chosen child, contradicting the eternal heaven realm, displaying the moon-splitting cascade. Entering the conferred God battle, Mu Huanji's mind was a mess, as he spoke incoherently in a daze for a long time. Great Elder, don't ask any questions. Let's go back first, Mu Bingyun said. She gave a deep glance at Xianxia before asking, "Are you going to come with us or?" "Of course, I'll be following behind the palace masters and elders," Xianxia replied. After saying his greetings to Hu Ruli, who had gone crazy with joy, and the other people from the Flame God realm, Xianxia left the place with Mu Bingyun and the rest. The palace allotted to them wasn't that big, but it was a particularly calm place. Furthermore, there was a sound obstruction barrier between the residences provided to the Star Realms. Xianxia was waiting for Mu Bingyun to reprimand him, but it was only her sigh that he heard after a long while. "Xianxia, you know, your master will definitely become furious once she comes to know of the things you have done, from forcibly passing the first round to everything that followed after." "I know." Xianxia lowered his head. "You did everything back there all to meet her, right?" Mu Bingyun's gaze turned away. Xianxia nodded as he said in a light voice, "I believed that if I enter the eternal heaven realm by hook or crook, then I'll be able to meet her. But she didn't come here, therefore I had no choice but to think of a method that could let her hear of my name." "Have you thought of a possibility?" Mu Bingyun asked. "What if she knows that you have come to the God realm but doesn't wish to meet you?" Xianxia was taken aback. Soon after, he shook his head without the slightest hesitation. "No, that certainly can't be true. She must be missing me as much as I am missing her." "It seems that I underestimated your obsession over her all along," Mu Bingyun said with a light sigh. "Now that things have developed to this point, there would be no use rebuking you. You have advanced to this extent with much difficulty, and I think my words or someone else's admonishment won't make you act obediently. Now we can only hope that you can fulfill your wish. But be sure to keep in mind that you need to be very careful. Before you do something, think about the consequences of your actions first. Do make sure not to act recklessly again." "I am sorry, Palace Master Bingyun. I always make you worry about me," Xianxia said apologetically. "Once my wish is fulfilled and I return to the sect, I'll apologize to Master and accept any punishment she gives me. The conferred God battle is going to start tomorrow. Will you be participating?" Mu Bingyun asked all of a sudden. Xianxia immediately shook his head, even without giving it a thought. "Of course not. Given my strength, I'm bound to lose without a doubt, no matter the opponent I face. There is no need for me to shame myself. However, I'll go to watch the competition. Waiting for her to come? Amen." Xianxia was only aiming to be famous. He truly didn't have the least bit interest in the conferred God battle itself. Even if he had some interest, he didn't belong on that stage. He had surely attained his aim, and seemingly in a much better way than he had expected. As the final battle of the profound God convention, there was no doubt that the conferred God battle would attract the attention of the entire Eastern Divine region. Furthermore, the news that a profound practitioner with a profound strength at only the first level of the Divine Tribulation realm had made his way into the conferred God battle and becoming one of the 32 conferred God candidates was not only bombastic, it was news that directly stupefied over 80% of all profound practitioners who heard it. The name of Xianxia also crazily spread like a plague. After all, things of a different kind were always the greatest factor in stimulating others' curiosity and desire to gossip. It was a quiet night. The next day, when the conferred God battle was scheduled to begin, the eternal heaven realm was calm, but every place in the eastern divine region was noisy. The realm kings of the thousands of star realms gathered around star tablets too, waiting for the conferred God battle to start. Every fight of the conferred God battle was going to be projected in real time via star tablets. Even if you weren't present at the site of the competition, it was still possible to clearly watch the entire battle progress. Xianxia quietly passed the night, and the sky was already bright when he opened his eyes. Considering the time, the conferred god battle was going to begin very soon. At this time, be it the participants or the people planning to watch the competition, all of them had certainly entered the profound god stage by now. It was the same for the people from the Snow Song realm, with only Bingyun silently waiting for him all this time. Let's go. Chilly fog lightly drifted in the air, and a profound aura carried Xianxia up. Afterwards, the two of them flew to the center of the conferred god stage. Xianxia had already decided in his heart to not participate in the conferred god battle. When they reached the site of competition, he would immediately abandon his participation qualifications. In any case, he was going to be ridiculed by others, no matter whether he abandoned the competition or suffered a crushing defeat. The sole reason he was going to the conferred god stage was to wait for the appearance of Jasmine, after all. If Jasmine were to arrive at the eternal heaven realm, she would certainly go to the conferred god stage. However, Xianxia, have you told others that you're from the Blue Pole Star? Bingyun asked. She was flying at a very slow speed as she brought Xianxia along with her. Xianxia was thinking of meeting the person he was missing so much, and she was thinking of leaving the eternal heaven realm as soon as possible. Neither of them was interested in the conferred god battle. It was her first time in so many years racking her brains for the sake of another person. Xianxia was her savior, after all. She had promised him back then that she would help him meet the heavenly slaughter star god. Xianxia repeatedly telling her to take care of him was not really the main reason behind her supporting Xianxia. Xianxia pondered a bit before replying. Except you, Master, and Senior Sister Xiaolan, there is no one else who knows about it. Oh, on my first day in freezing snow hall, I told Fengmo that I'm from the Blue Pole Star. However, that happened during a casual conversation, so he should have long forgotten about it. When he first arrived at the god realm, it was simply impossible for him to think that things would develop to this point. Therefore, he wasn't the least bit wary about mentioning his origins at the time, but he never mentioned the name of the planet he came from ever again. Bingyun lightly nodded her head. That's good then. Due to what you did yesterday, your name has been spreading like wildfire. Currently, countless people in the Eastern Divine region want to personally see the person who has entered the conferred god battle with a profound strength of the first level of the Divine Tribulation realm. Those interested in you will likely inquire about your information and will even investigate your origins. You must make sure to remember that the planet you originate from is called Neptune. Bingyun should be mentioning the name of a planet that didn't exist. Okay, Xianxia obediently replied. I contacted your master with sound transmission to have her quietly spread the information of you being from Neptune in the Snow Song realm. Now, even if someone is paying special attention to you and wants to investigate your place of origin, they would have no way to look for it. Amen. Xianxia nodded his head as he felt deeply moved in his heart. When he first came to the god realm, he was like a grain of sand floating inside a vast ocean. He never thought that there would come a day when he would be greatly well known in this world and attract the attention of people who were at an extremely high level, although it was more infamous rather than famous. Especially when he would directly give up on the competition today, he would become the target of ridicule and countless sighs from the people of the entire Eastern Divine region. However, that doesn't matter at all. I've never been a part of this world. Oh right, Palace Master Bingyun, the 4 great god emperors are all present at the conferred god stage. Even the dragon monarch and a god emperor of the southern divine region have come. What is the major event that you all discussed over? How is this session of the profound god convention related to this major event? Xianxia asked. Bingyun looked ahead. It certainly is a major event, but not something that you and I have the capability to get involved in. We are about to reach the conferred god stage. If you're interested in knowing about it, I'll tell you later. The conferred god stage had already appeared in their line of sight. It was this time that 2 figures swiftly flew over from another direction. Jun Wuming, Jun Zile. Coincidentally meeting the master-disciple pair, Bingyun slowed her speed as she lightly greeted. Senior Sword Sovereign. It might be a bit awkward for her to meet him here due to the incident that happened in the Snow Song realm, but Jun Wuming was, after all, a senior who had an extremely high reputation and cultivation in the Eastern Divine region. Therefore, Bingyun was still courteous to him. Although Jun Wuming didn't say anything, he did return her greeting with a nod. Afterwards, the master-disciple pair flitted past them. I can't believe how loathsome that Xianxia is. Every time I see him, I feel an almost uncontrollable urge to kill him with my own hands. Junzile said resentfully while gnashing her teeth. She had followed Jun Wuming as she practiced the art of sword, and her heart had always been calm like still water. But it was only when Yun Qi was in front of her that she would suddenly feel the impulse to kill. Furthermore, he had continuously employed such despicable means that could only be held in contempt, and actually entered the conferred god stage in the end. Disciple feels deep shame to be grouped with someone like him. I didn't expect that the eternal heaven realm. Layer, Jun Wuming said. Make sure not to underestimate. He had far more understanding of the amazing nature of such invisibility than Junzile. However, considering her hatred towards Yun Qi, he inwardly sighed before changing his words. Make sure not to underestimate any of your opponents. Don't be distracted by other thoughts before the conferred god battle. Understood. Junzile felt awakened in her heart, and her mind rapidly calmed down. By the time Bingyun and Yun Qi arrived at the conferred god stage, nearly all the audience from the thousands of great star realms was already present. As Yun Qi appeared there, countless gazes of various kinds swept over him at the same time. After his deeds spread throughout the eastern divine region for a whole day, Yun Qi was absolutely getting an amazingly great amount of attention at the moment. Be it due to curiosity or to see him make a joke of himself. This super unusual one who had made his way into the conferred god battle with profound strength at the first level of the divine tribulation realm had now become the biggest attraction of the conferred god battle. When the other conferred god candidates saw Yun Qi, the majority of them snorted in extreme disdain. Yun Qi didn't go to the battle preparation area and instead directly sat down in the seating area of the Snow Song realm. With all kinds of gazes staring fixedly at him, the expression on his face didn't change in the slightest. Rather, it was the other people from the Snow Song realm who felt restless. Brother Yun, Huo Poyun's voice came from the adjacent seating area. He was sitting in the seating area of the Flame God realm as he said sincerely, "In the conferred God battle, we definitely need to go all out so as to not have any regrets later. I believe in Brother Yun Qi's strength. No matter the result, you'll certainly give all of them a shock." Yun Qi nodded with a faint smile but didn't say anything in reply. "Yuner, in the conferred God battle this time, all other participants except for you and Yun Qi are going to be from the upper star realms. The previous conferred God battles were totally monopolized by those from the upper star realms. As for that foolish boy Yun Qi, forget about him. You have to give it your best. Not only for our flame god realm, but also for the glory of all the middle star realms," Hu Ruli instructed his disciple. "No, there is one more person," Yan Juhai interrupted him. "That youngster called Wei Hen should also not be from an upper star realm. It's just that I don't know why he would hide his place of origin, despite having the opportunity to be famous everywhere and receive the honor of a lifetime. Moreover, even his name should be fake." "Like I care about him," Hu Ruli said without the slightest interest. "If the eternal heaven realm truly wants to investigate his place of origin, it would be a walk in the park." The four great god emperors together arrived before long. Soon after, God Emperor Shishin and the dragon monarch also came, one after another. "Oh, this old man thought that the dragon monarch would certainly not be interested in this conferred god battle," the eternal heaven emperor said with a smile. "Haha, now that this dragon has come here, how can I not personally witness the heroic bearing of the young generation of the eastern divine region?" The dragon monarch replied while smiling slightly. "There is no other thing to do anyways, so I came to watch," God Emperor Shishin said smilingly. "Tusk, perhaps something interesting might happen again like yesterday, right?" "HMPH, do as you wish." The eternal heaven god emperor was already no longer as polite to Kang Shishin as he was the day before. "Kui, let's get it started." It was the time for the competition to begin. Profound light glittered on the conferred god stage as a screen of light soared into the sky, reaching as high as several hundred meters. There were 32 names engraved orderly on the screen of light. 32 conferred god candidates. Honorable Kui was not only in charge of the third round of preliminaries, he was also going to supervise the conferred god battle. He stood in the sky over the center of the conferred god stage. His eyes appeared like cold swords, which terrified the heart of anyone who looked at them, due to the power and chilliness contained within them. Honorable Kui gave a long speech on the customs of the conferred god battle and introduced the 32 conferred god candidates of this generation. Finally, he changed the tone of his voice. This conferred god battle will have the same double elimination system as in the past. Those who keep winning their fights will stay in the conferred gods group. The ones who lose once will fall into the losers group, and will be then eliminated if they lose again. The opponents of each fight will be randomly decided by the adjudication profound formation. Once you lose your consciousness, admit defeat, continuously do something that violates the rules, or are later than 15 breaths to enter the battlefield, you will be determined to have lost. The gaze of Honorable Kui Hui turned solemn as he pointed to the conferred god stage that was 150 kilometers below him. Once you get struck out of the area of the conferred god stage, you will be determined to have lost in that case too. The participants are not allowed to use contracted beasts or any special profound item, including body protection profound items. It is not allowed to use any sort of medicine either, but there is no such restriction on weapons. If it becomes impossible to decide the result of a fight in a short period of time due to some special reason, then the respected god emperors will decide the winner and loser. Furthermore, as everyone will be going all out during their fight, it will be hard to avoid getting injured. Thus, no one must complain about it. However, if one side has already admitted defeat, you are not allowed to continue attacking your opponent. Also, you must not attempt to kill your opponent due to personal grudges or malice. HMPH. Do keep in mind that you cannot conceal anything from the eyes of this honored one or the respected god emperors. Lastly, Honorable Kui swept his gaze around him before saying slowly, I will once again state the rule that you all should be aware of. Regardless of what happens during a fight, only this honored can get involved in it. No other person is allowed to interfere in the fight. Otherwise, don't blame this honored one to be merciless with you. There was sternness in each of the words spoken by Honorable Kui, causing all the people listening to him feel a chill in their hearts. However, Honorable Kui didn't really need to remind them of this rule. Who would dare to interfere in the conferred god battle in front of the eyes of all the god emperors that were present here? Everyone present was quietly staring at Honorable Kui, and it was solely Xianxia who was constantly looking in all directions. His gaze would especially sweep past the seating area of the star god realm over and over again, but he didn't see the figure of Jasmine, nor did he sense her aura. She will definitely come. Right now, she is definitely on her way here, Xianxia repeatedly said in his heart. Today, 16 initial battles will be held and no one will be eliminated, but the result of your fights will affect the fate of your battles tomorrow. Honorable Kui descended from the sky and he landed before the gigantic screen of light. The 16 winners will join the conferred gods group, and the remaining 16 losers will join the losers group. Your opponents today will be decided by the adjudication profound formation. The moment Honorable Kui finished his words, rays of light suddenly flashed on the screen of light behind him. At the same time, the names of the 32 conferred god candidates disappeared from it. When the names appeared again, the opponents of each round had been determined. Everyone at the conferred god stage could extremely clearly see the matchup list for the first round of conferred god battle. It was also being displayed in every corner of the eastern divine region through the projections of the star god tablets. Battle 1, Flame God Realm Huopoyun, V's, Shrouding Sky Realm Lu Chenyuan, Battle 1. Yuner, you are in Battle 1. As soon as the matchup list appeared, Huo Ruli let out a loud roar as he immediately stood up in excitement. Xianxia raised his head to surprisingly find Huopoyun's name listed on the top of the list. His opponent was from one of the 3 greatest and strongest star realms, Shrouding Sky Realm. Lu Chenyuan is the twin younger brother of Lu Lengchuan, one of the 4 god children of the eastern region, as well as the 73rd son of the Shrouding Sky Realm king. He turned 47 years old this year, and has a cultivation of the 8th level of the divine spirit realm. Yan Juhai said in a low voice as he knitted his brows. Not only is Poyun going to be fighting in the first battle, he will also have to face such a powerful opponent. He is indeed a powerful opponent. Huo Ruli also secretly breathed in surprise, but he didn't show the slightest sign of nervousness on his face or in his behavior. Instead, he laughed loudly. Yuner, Master is already proud of you for coming this far. It doesn't matter whether you win or lose this fight, you just have to try your best. Master, rest easy. Disciple will never fear any of his opponents. Confronting the enormous oppressive power that the name of Lu Chenyuan possessed, Huo Poyun was calm and undaunted. Following, he widened his eyes all of a sudden as he blurted out, What a coincidence, Brother Yun. You'll be fighting in the next battle. While Hugh Ruli was speaking, Xianxia saw his name too. Battle 2, Holy Eve's Realm, Luo Chang'an. V's, Snow Song Realm, Xianxia. It was certainly very coincidental for Hugh Poyan and him to be fighting in the first and second round respectively. His opponent was the son of the Holy Eve's Realm King, and the elder brother of Luo Changsheng, who was the strongest among the 4 god children of the eastern region, Luo Chang'an. Xianxia and Hugh Poyan were the only 2 participants from the Middle Star realms. Not only were their fights arranged in the first 2 battles, both of their opponents were from the 3 strongest Great Star realms, namely the Holy Eve's Realm, Glazed Light Realm, Shrouding Sky Realm. It was just that compared to Xianxia's opponent, Luo Chang'an, who had profound strength at the 6th level of the Divine Spirit Realm, Hugh Poyan's opponent, Lu Chenyuan, was obviously much stronger. However, Xianxia was not the least bit concerned about his opponent. But then at this time, his heart jumped all of a sudden. He raised his head as fast as lightning, and his line of sight locked onto a person in an instant. Wei Hen, he was firmly staring at the screen of light. This person, whose face remained stiff the whole time and seemed to be completely devoid of emotions, had a slightly contorted face at this moment. His pupils were fixedly staring at the screen of light, as he clenched hands which were trembling faintly. Due to being too intensely agitated, he also slightly lost control over his power that he had kept hidden tenaciously all this while. Xianxia's gaze swiftly returned on the screen of light. Battle 3. Wei Hen, vs. Thunderclap Realm Li Jianming, Thunderclap Realm Li Jianming. Why would he suddenly react like this? Could there be such a coincidence? Is this person called Li Jianming his objective?